apparently the relationship was under some stress, and that she had made the commitment to the decision to close the daycare on August 27th, and she was informing this neighbor, who also had a child at the daycare, although not today, that she was going to limit down to 2 days a week, close in 2 more weeks, and that it was her husband who owned the house, and she was going to be leaving.
In fact, when Korn was in front of the crime tape there, we also saw there was a vehicle behind him, sort of deep behind him. And he said that was actually the car of, this family. The car was still running. And so he has been he's seeing some of the information from neighbors, but also people who have their kids at that particular daycare. And so you just start to think about the ripple effect that this sort of incident could have for not only the parents, but also those kids, those poor children who were inside, who may have heard, may have seen something. You just never know. And then how to have those conversations moving forward. In
fact, we talked with a child psychologist within the past hour about that very topic, about how to talk to our children about this. And the thing is, with children that young, and Simone, you know this, because your own child, right? You've got a 4-year-old. You ask them, how did it go at school today? What happened?
Nothing. That is, and that's typically what you get.
And I remember the exact same thing for my 2 girls, right? So they're likely not going to talk about this, and things will dribble out here and there. And the psychologist assured us that most likely what is going to happen is that you'll notice disruptions in their behavior. They're not hungry. They're not going to the bathroom when they usually go to the bathroom. They're irritable and were up at night or couldn't sleep. So those are the kind of things that we've been talking about and learning this afternoon.
Yeah, we have been having a lot of conversations. We spoke with the child psychologist, but we also wanted to continue these conversations. We have our Courtney Godfrey, who is in our newsroom right now and has an interview for us. Courtney, what do you have?
Yeah, so we've got U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar joining us on the line. It's my understanding that she is on the line, so why don't we bring her in? Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Courtney. Appreciate it on this tragic day.
I'm sorry that we're having to chat with you during such a tragic time, but I just want your response. These are your constituents here, your response to this violence in Hopkins today.
Well, your heart, you just think about these little kids in the daycare. Our daughter went to daycare for a while. You think about dropping your child off and then thinking about them in this scene of incredible violence and tragedy. You think about the relatives of this family, what they've lost with the little child, a mom, and what these kids witnessed, which is clearly, no matter how old they are, is going to be with them forever. And I'm sure their parents are doing everything they can to make these children feel safe. The other piece of this, as a former prosecutor, I served as Hennepin County attorney, ran the office for 8 years, and we did a lot on domestic violence. That I couldn't help but think about immediately was, what are the signs ahead going into this? What's the past with this man, and what apparently is a situation where he just violently attacked his own wife and his own child. And those kinds of situations with domestic violence we've tragically seen before, where it may be a long-term situation, or it may be something that the child happens to be there and also ends up killed. I remember I had a poster outside my wall for years when I was the DA, and it was a picture of a woman holding her baby, and it said, with a Band-Aid over her nose, and it said, "Beat your wife and your child will go to jail." The point there was that if kids are in a home with domestic violence, they either become a victim themselves or get exposed to it and go on to be involved themselves. You cannot just separate out that anger and that horror of someone killing their own spouse by the effect on the kids, and this was obviously the ultimate tragedy.
You mentioned you are the former Hennepin County prosecutor. Hennepin County Prosecutor's Office has a Victim Services Division. What resources are available for the victims of this tragedy today?
Well, they clearly will want to have them talk to someone, a trained professional who's used to dealing with children who witness that violence. Because sometimes with kids, it just doesn't show up right away, and you want to be able to talk them through it. and make sure they're okay. And depending on how old they are, you know, a 4-year-old is going to process this different than a 1-year-old who may hardly be able to communicate, may not have quite the memories of that 4-year-old. So I'm sure they're doing that, and then the love and their own family is going to embrace these children. The shock for the parents that this was also someone they trusted, their own daycare provider. Everyone has that feeling of when you leave your children with a babysitter and someone they probably loved as well, who's now lost. So the whole thing, and you think about the first responders getting there, seeing all of it, but thankfully getting the kids out. Thankfully no one else was killed, because obviously this was an adult, and before taking his own life he could have easily killed all the other children as well. So it is all around a tragedy, but the things I'm focused on is those kids, and that they get the help they need, the family surrounding the sadness of the people that died, and then of course what can we do going forward? What do we learn from this about the domestic violence, and about if there were any signs that were out there that could have prohibited this from happening and stopped this from happening.
Yeah, we don't know if there is a criminal history there, if the victims reached out for help. We don't know if there's a history. But do you see areas for improvement in the mental health or the criminal division when we look at a case like this?
Of course. One of the things that I'm focused on is improving our mental health resources in our state. And that includes available beds, that includes all kinds of things when it comes to mental health, because we've had a change in our state where we went from institutional, more community-based. A lot of places have done that. It's a more sane way to deal with it. But then if you don't have available help for people, or the beds available, or anything else, it can lead to tragedies. And the other thing you look at, I remember when I was county attorney, we'd look back at cases. It's a hard thing to do, but you've got to step back and professionally look at it and say, were there signs? Did this person touch the system in some way that we could make things better? So it's the mental health, but it's also continuing our vigilance when it comes to domestic violence and the kind of signs that are out there when this happens. Again, I don't think any of us have knowledge. Maybe we'll learn more from the police chief, who's been doing such a good job of ensuring the community that they are on top of this, and that people understand what happened. And the more information we have for the public that can be available, the better. That's always been my philosophy.
All right, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, so appreciate you making the time today.
Of course, thanks.
All right, I'm going to send it back to Tim and Simone at the desk. That was U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar responding to the tragedy today in Hopkins.
Thanks so much, Courtney. And of course, this has been a big 24 hours for the senator as well, who won the Democratic nomination last night by Minnesota voters to run on the ballot in the election for governor coming up in November.
Yeah, when you start to think of lawmakers and people in those positions, and you think about how important these conversations are, when you talk about domestic violence and certain laws put into place, it just puts it into better perspective of how important these conversations are.
Right. Normally today we would be talking about the elections, and that's what we had committed to talk to the senator about, what we wanted to talk to her about, and the campaign going forward. But there are some things that just transcend some of the big headlines of the day, and this is it, especially when you have a family that's no longer with us, and children were involved. So we're going to have continuing coverage of the shootings, the tragedy that took place this morning in Hopkins. We'll be back with more right after this break.
We continue to follow our breaking news, which we have been doing for the last several hours after, sadly, we know 2 adults and a child dead at an in-home daycare in Hopkins. This specifically happened at 236 Tyler Avenue North. This was called the Brown Bear Daycare. We know several children were inside. Those children likely under the age of 5. We do know that there was this man who came into the house. He actually owned the house. There have been some information that we have learned over the course of time now, so we could sort of piece this all together. But he owned the home. He was with his wife. He then came into the house and stabbed the wife. Also, we have learned a daughter as well, and this is all happening while children were inside during daycare.
And according to Corin Hoggard, who's talked to sources at the scene, the perpetrator then apparently went into the garage and took his own life with a gun. Now, we don't know the exact weapons involved yet. We are going to learn more coming up at 4 o'clock this afternoon at a new briefing by both the police chief, Brent Johnson, and the mayor, Patrick Conlon, who have been trying to get out there right away this morning to assure the public that they are safe, that the children at the daycare are all safe. 6 of them involved that would have witnessed this morning. And as Senator Klobuchar was just telling us here a few moments ago, anything could have happened. And how grateful that the entire community is that the perpetrator did not take this a step further and harmed any of the children that were inside of the daycare other than his own daughter.
Yeah, but you also think of the awful situation just with his family in general. You think of the wife who we heard from our Corin Hoggard, and he heard from a woman who has her child in that daycare that this woman planned to leave this man pretty soon, and she actually planned to close this daycare on the 27th of this month because she was ending the relationship and that the home actually belonged to him. So a lot of just unfortunate and sad, heartbreaking pieces that we're learning that's a part of this story. But you mentioned the mayor. The mayor had been on scene for hours. Our producer, who had been in the control room, told us that she saw him on the scene for a while. We heard from him earlier, but now we have learned so much information that some of it is sort of dated. So that's why that press conference at 4 o'clock will be so important to hear just some new pieces of information.
Now, and speaking of the mayor, Mayor Fry, Jacob Fry of Minneapolis, gave his budget address today. And this, we have to be honest with you, this was a big news day. There's a lot of headlines taking place out there today, in addition to the election results that happened last night. But one of the big things going on is Mayor Fry today is delivering his budget address. And this was anticipated to be a major address because the city of Minneapolis will face a budget shortfall going into the next fiscal year, and he was going to outline his priorities as to how he intends to solve that, what kind of tax increases that may be on the horizon. So a big deal. And just contextually, Mayor Herr is going to do the same thing tomorrow in St. Paul. But to start off his address today, he stood back and said, look, we need to talk about the tragedy in Hopkins because it happened to us almost exactly a year ago at Annunciation Church. Let's listen into what Mayor Fry had to say this morning.
Before I start the speech, I want to note that there is presently a critical incident that is taking place in Hopkins. While there is not a ton of information yet, I know that our hearts and our prayers are with the people of Hopkins and any families that have been impacted. I have already touched base directly with Mayor Hanlon, offered any assistance that we possibly can provide. While I don't imagine that a decision point will come from me or involving this city while I'm giving this speech, I've also authorized staff to pull me temporarily for a brief pause so that any additional assistance or mutual aid can be provided. The city of Minneapolis stands with Hopkins. We are not strangers to crisis, and when it takes place, we work together. That's exactly what we'll be doing here.
I think the key takeaway there is we are not strangers to crisis. The city of Minneapolis went through something similar, equally tragic, almost exactly a year ago with the shootings at Annunciation Church. We had 2 students who died in that situation, and many families just terrorized by what happened, and the community response was overwhelming to support those families, as I'm sure it will be in Hopkins as well.
Oh yeah, and you start to think of some of those families who were involved in Annunciation, or maybe they just had their kids going there, and you think about, you know, what this sort of incident that happened in Hopkins sort of does for them too, because you think of trigger words or trigger incidents that maybe bring back flashbacks of what happened on that particular day. And I can't believe we were sitting here, we were doing this
exactly a year ago.
Yeah, talking about Annunciation, but it just speaks to the magnitude, especially for him to address this before his budget address. But we have been, you know, getting some statements and just some reactions after what happened in Hopkins. I just wanted to read you a quick statement from Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, and this was her statement regarding what happened there in Hopkins. She said, "We are aware of this morning's tragic and devastating incident in Hopkins and are working with Hopkins police as they investigate. Our office's Victim Services Division is prepared to support the individuals impacted by this incident. We will provide further updates when available." And I think that's the key piece to this, Tim, is when you think about some of the kids who were still inside of that home when all of this happened, you think of them at this point, right? How are they feeling? How are they doing? You think of these parents of, you know, your heart just drops when you get a phone call, or when you maybe just see it on the news, because we have to remember sometimes we beat the police to some scenes in some scenarios. And so when people turn on the TV and they see what's happened, you know, you might call your neighbor, "Oh my gosh, something has happened, you know, in this area where I know my neighbor lives." I think we have to think about just sort of the chain of events that happens after we get this sort of call.
We want to reset here for a little bit, because we know a lot of you are joining us online and streaming on Fox Local at the moment, and may not have had a chance to see some of the initial events and hear some of the initial thoughts from police. So we're going to replay for you now the briefing by Police Chief Brent Johnson from earlier today after the incident happening. Let's roll this for you right now.
We're here this morning due to a tragic incident occurring on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Hopkins police and multiple agencies responded to a domestic situation at an in-home daycare. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased male, female, and juvenile victim. There were other children present within the daycare, and we were able to get them out of the daycare and reunify them with their parents. At this time, there's no outstanding threats in the community. This is an isolated incident, and we are continuing to investigate it throughout the day and probably evening. I can provide you more information as we gather the information throughout the day.
Was this family?
All the victims appear to be a part of one family.
How many kids were inside the home when it happened?
There were 7 children within the daycare. One is deceased.
Can you give an approximate age of that child?
I honestly do not know.
Were there any other injuries besides the 3 that are deceased?
There were no other injuries to any other children inside the daycare.
Chief, is this a house that has been known to y'all, or is there any history with this couple that you know of?
At this point, I do not have that information.
Chief, what time did this happen?
This happened just after 9 this morning.
Was the person who perpetrated the attack one of the deceased, or do we know where they are?
We believe the perpetrator is deceased.
Is the perpetrator the male or the female?
We believe it's the male.
What's the relationship of the adults who were deceased to the daycare, if any, or to the home?
It's believed to be the daycare owners.
Do they live there?
We believe so, yes.
Both of them?
Yes.
Are they, what's their relationship, husband, wife?
I honestly do not know the marital status of them, or if they're partners. I don't know at this point.
But the child that was killed is their child?
Believed to be their child, yes.
Can you just talk about the gravity of this situation, dealing with something like this, and then also having other people's children in the home at this time that this happened?
Well, this is a horrific, tragic situation for any community, especially here in Hopkins, where we don't see this type of crime. It's a rarity here in Hopkins. We're a very safe community, and the impact is felt not only here but elsewhere for every parent who has a child in a daycare setting or anywhere where they don't have immediate control over their child. So yes, it's heartbreaking.
Chief, I'm sorry if I missed this. Was this a stabbing? What was the weapon involved here?
At this time, we are still trying to determine the weapons involved, and we'll release that at a later date.
Anything about the nature of the injuries?
No, at this point, I can't tell you.
How were police notified about this, and what sort of response did you guys have right away?
Our response was due to a parent of one of the daycare children who had arrived to drop off their children.
Did they witness it?
I believe so.
What are the ages of the range of the children there and the deceased?
I mean, they were all very, very young children, so I don't have their ages at this point.
Under 5?
It was somewhere around that age or less.
Do we know if there was any no contact, domestic restraining order, anything like that involved in this couple?
Again, we're trying to dive into the background here, but initially our goal was to get here to protect the scene as quick as possible with multiple agencies. That's why I had a very large response. And at that point, the goal is just to preserve the scene and make sure that everyone was safe. Render aid as quick as possible.
Sorry, are the kids all back with their parents now?
Yes, all the children have been reunified with their parents, and that's why this took so long to come out here and tell me this.
Can you just tell me again your reaction? I mean, you hit on it a little bit that this really is a nightmare situation for a parent. You drop your kid off at daycare, and then you find out this happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's no worse scenario than this, where you drop off your child to somewhere you think is safe, and you get that phone call. I think we can all relate who have children and those who don't, that this is just a tragic situation anywhere in the world, let alone here in Hopkins. And again, this is a rarity, and we will continue to investigate it as thorough and transparent as possible.
Chief, 2 questions here. Maybe too early. Do we know, did the perpetrator take his own life?
Preliminarily, we believe that to be the case.
Okay. And how are your officers holding up too? I mean, this is, not just for the community, this has got to be traumatic for them as well.
The initial officers on scene, this was a tragic situation for them as well. And I can see on the look on their faces that this was one of those ones that you'll remember throughout your entire career, if not life.
Do you have any expectations about when you'll have other updates, and will it be happening here at the scene or someplace else? Or?
I was hoping to do one at 4 o'clock today at City Hall. I also have Mayor Hanlon from the city here present with us today, and we'll put out more information as we gather the intelligence from the scene.
I know you're still working at one last, if you know, is this a licensed daycare? Do you have any idea?
I do not have that information.
Did the suspect shoot himself did he shoot or was he stabbed?
At this point in time, I can't tell you that information. We'll be able to tell you later this afternoon, but there's 3 deceased individuals in the house, all believed to be related.
Did the husband live at the house at the time?
I don't have that information.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Did the mayor want to say a couple words?
Did you want to say a couple words, Mayor? If you guys want.
Yeah.
Anything.
Hang on. Hey, guys, we got the mayor coming. Mayor, why don't you come on right up.
You want to start by just introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Patrick Hanlon. I'm the mayor of Hopkins. Obviously, this is a really fresh incident, so we are focused on letting the police do their job and get the details of the situation. This community is reeling. It's a small community. We're only 20,000 people, but we operate as a small community, and everyone knows each other. There are no strangers in this community, so we are all reeling with this information right now as a community, and so grateful for the different departments that have come out from across the West Metro here and immediately to lend a hand in this situation. So just grateful for the police work that's going on right now and reeling from a really tragic incident. So thank you.
Anything else you want to add here? I mean, this is obviously horrific for anybody.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I think the first and foremost is to know that there's not an ongoing threat. I think when you see a lot of police cars in our neighborhood and a lot of folks reacting and responding, to know that there's not an additional threat to our community. But yes, we are all just reeling from this tragic incident that's going on in our city right now.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage. Breaking news out of the city of Hopkins at this hour. It's a situation, a very tragic domestic situation that started about 9 o'clock this morning. Hopkins police have been really pretty forthcoming with information about what happened at a daycare, the Brown Bear daycare there in the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North.
Yeah, and initially this was a very, it was an ongoing scene without a lot of information that was being released to the public. So we knew early this morning this involved a daycare and a call of a stabbing. As soon as the police chief and the mayor addressed the public, it was released that there was no ongoing threat. This was a domestic situation. We have a man and a woman who are deceased and a child, but there were children there. There were 7 children reported at the daycare this morning, and this is an in-home daycare facility. So again, around 9 o'clock this morning, the Hopkins Police Department received that report of a stabbing at a residence operating as a home daycare. And then when officers arrived, they found the victims there, 2 adults and 1 child. This is a situation we've been covering for the last couple of hours. Scary for people who were in the area because you think of an incident of violence at a daycare facility, and parents feel vulnerable in these situations when their children are not with them, and so there's been a lot of outpouring of support for the city of Hopkins and what they're going through right now.
Yeah, Police Chief Brent Johnson, was quick to give us this information, saying the perpetrator appears to be among those deceased, and they are believed to have taken their own life. Calls it an isolated incident. There is, as Kelsey pointed out, no threat to the public at this time, so it was very isolated. We are starting to get some information in from those that had some sort of ancillary contact with the daycare operator prior to this happening.
Yeah, so this morning, and this is through our reporter, Corin Hoggard, he talked to a woman who brings their child to this daycare. And this morning, that parent says they received a text from the daycare owner, the woman, that it was, quote, crazy at the house and not to bring their child there. And police have confirmed for Corin that this daycare operator, the woman, was going to close this daycare at the end of the month, so just in a couple of weeks, and that there had been some ongoing trouble in her relationship with her husband.
This surfaced with a 911 call, as Chief Johnson said. A parent who arrived, who apparently didn't get that text, drop off their children, was the one that made the call to police. It's a little uncertain at this point what that parent saw. They may have witnessed what happened, or they may have walked into the scene of what had happened earlier. We are not completely clear on that one. Still working on that to get some more information. But as you can imagine, the scenario there for any parent also deceased. They are a couple. They've been described as husband and wife, although we haven't fully confirmed that as well.
And we're told the children who were inside the daycare this morning were very, very young children, and then had to be taken out by EMS and first responders who came to the scene. So it's unclear just their ages, but likely toddler to maybe early school age children.
Yeah. Police have blocked off Tyler Street there between 2nd Street and Lake Street. If you're in that area, obviously you'll know why that's blocked off. Investigation is well underway. They do consider it a crime scene, even though this is a domestic, well contained to the 3 people that are now deceased, unfortunately, but they do have it blocked off as a crime scene. Multiple agencies there are on the scene with the investigation now well underway. We should point out, too, for those of you that are watching or listening, there is a 4 o'clock press conference. We are getting a lot of information from those who are on the scene, but also from a much earlier 11 a.m. press conference where Chief Johnson gave us the details that he had in hand at that point. He realized there's more to come, and that's why they scheduled that 4 o'clock this afternoon press conference as well, which obviously we will take live.
Yes, so we'll plan on taking that live here on Fox 9 and Fox Local at 4 o'clock, and we'll probably hear from elected officials in the city of Hopkins as well, just about any information that they may have learned about the family, the suspect who is now deceased in this domestic murder-suicide, and what they know about maybe any signs of violence or any requests for help from this home. It's unclear right now. There were a lot of questions at the news conference this morning, but investigators are still dealing with the initial scene, so they're just not able to answer any bigger picture questions just yet. But there were questions about whether or not there had been a restraining order or any calls for service, any 911 calls, anything like that. So a lot of those pieces are still coming together.
Some of those details are pretty well combined in a press conference. I mentioned it earlier from Police Chief Brett Johnson. I think we have some of that, if not all of it, we'd like to play for you. For those of you who may just be joining us again on this situation, very tragic out of Hopkins, let's listen in.
There's no worse scenario than this, where you drop off your child to somewhere you think is safe, and you get that phone call. I think we can all relate who have children, and those who don't, that this is just a tragic situation anywhere in the world, let alone here in Hopkins. And again, this is a rarity, and we will continue to investigate it as thorough and transparent as possible. We're here this morning due to a tragic incident occurring on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Hopkins police and multiple agencies responded to a domestic situation at an in-home daycare. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased male, female, and juvenile victim. There were other children present within the daycare, and we were able to get them out of the daycare and reunify them with their parents. At this time, there's no outstanding threats in the community. This is an isolated incident, and we are continuing to investigate it throughout the day and probably evening. I can provide you more information as we gather the information throughout the day.
Was this family?
All the victims appear to be a part of one family.
How many kids were inside the home when it happened?
There were 7 children within the daycare. One is deceased.
Can you give an approximate age of that child?
I honestly do not know.
Were there any other injuries besides the 3 that are deceased?
There were no other injuries to any other children inside the daycare.
Okay, some important points there that he has reiterated again, and that is that this is an isolated incident. So those folks in Hopkins or anywhere nearby know that this has been contained to that house. It's very much being considered a domestic incident. They do call it a murder-suicide. We do know that, and he did say in an earlier part of that he believes that the male suspect would have been the perpetrator in this particular case, and the wife or partner victim and the young daughter victim.
All part of the same family, and they confirmed earlier today in this news conference that the suspect in this case took their own life. Domestic calls are among the most dangerous calls that law enforcement get. They know how dangerous and volatile these situations can be. And again, we were talking about this a few moments ago. It's unclear if there were any previous calls for help to this particular household, or if there had been any ongoing legal case in this particular family. The daycare is an in-home daycare that is small, as they typically are when they're in-home daycare centers, and usually, according to state records, it would be a daycare that's big enough for up to about 10 children. So yeah, all of those small children, as you heard the police chief say, were reunited with their family members as soon as possible.
And important to note, as you point out, that it was a licensed daycare too. Again, it's called the Brown Bear Daycare. Those that live in that neighborhood would identify it as the mural, like a woods mural that they have on the garage door. So if you're familiar with that area, that's the area that we're talking about. That's the actual house that we're talking about. Is the daycare.
Yeah, Tyler Avenue.
We're going to send you to break now, and when we come back, more on this very tragic event unfolding in Hopkins.
And welcome back to our continuing coverage of this situation in Hopkins that unfolded early this morning, around 9 o'clock this morning, a domestic situation that resulted in the death of a daycare provider, her child, and then the suspect also, according to police, taking his own life, all while there were children at an in-home daycare. And this initially there was a huge police presence because it came across as a stabbing at a child care center. And so other agencies, Hopkins, everybody rushing to the scene. There is no longer a threat to the public. Those children who were inside the daycare have been reunited with their families.
So in situations like this can create a sort of a very traumatic situation in that neighborhood, and really for many people who may see this. St. Paul Police Chief. Now he is a law enforcement consultant, deals with security and crisis management. So I think, you know, in times like this, it's a good way to sort of talk to somebody about a situation they may have been in or seen in their past lives and how it's handled. Courtney?
Yeah, Randy, Todd Axtell was the police chief for 6 years in St. Paul. He has 30 years, more than 30 years experience in policing. Unfortunately, he's seen these situations before and is going to try and walk us through kind of the protocol and the process when something this tragic happens. Todd, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on such a terrible day.
Yeah, truly tragic. Todd, walk us through what officers, when they're responding to that scene in the first few minutes, what are they focused on doing?
Well, the officers, when they first arrive, certainly they really don't know what to expect. And that's the interesting dynamic of being a first responder. You get the call, you get the dispatch notes, you don't know what you're walking into until you actually go through the threshold of that door. And I can tell you, it's just a tragic, one of the most tragic things a police officer can do. All first responders, the dispatchers, the medical responders, everyone who has to process that scene when they go through that door and see what's unfolded. The first thing they do, of course, is to make sure that they provide aid when possible, whenever possible, and provide safety for anybody else who's still on the scene. But what a tragic thing for our officers to see as they're going through that door when we have young people and children who are victimized. It's some of the most traumatic things that our first responders go through.
And we know those first few hours are critical. What is their priority in those early hours as far as securing the crime scene and the investigative process?
Yeah, as soon as the scene is rendered safe, evidence is started to be secured. You make sure that the scene is taped off. You protect all evidence that's there. It's critically important to protect that evidence. And sometimes you think of a circumstance like this where the suspect is reportedly deceased. You think, well, the investigation becomes a little more easy, but in fact it's quite the opposite, because you don't have a suspect to talk to find out what the motive was. So there's a lot of evidence that has to be recovered, a lot of data that needs to be gone through, cell phones, computers, everything that our investigators can find. It helps bring answers to the community and the family members who are craving those answers.
And Todd, we know that police on the scene said this is an isolated incident, that the public was not at risk. How do they go about determining that?
Well, I'm sure they learned quickly after they got there what had happened based on the evidence. Of course, I believe there's another press conference coming up this afternoon where some more information may be revealed at that time. But it's so difficult to comb through that evidence as it comes in. And but again, I know the Hopkins police chief very well, Chief Johnson, the entire department there. They've got a great culture. But when an incident like this happens, they have less than 50 employees on the entire police department, and 30 of those are basically first responders. So this is a very overwhelming time for the department. I know they're relying on their partners, most likely the BCA, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, and other agencies to help or bring answers to the family and the victims here. And certainly the other children that were on scene is something that has to be followed up on, and making sure we have wraparound services around those children and anybody who's come in contact with the trauma that they encountered today.
And in your experience, how quickly can they mobilize those other departments, the BCA, the Sheriff's Office?
Courtney, I'm sorry, I lost you at the beginning. What was the first part of your question?
That's okay. I apologize for that. How quickly can these police departments mobilize support? So the BCA, crime scene investigators.
Yeah, that comes pretty quickly. Certainly, when you look at the time of the day that this incident happened at 9 a.m. Here we are midweek. So it's a little more efficient during this time of the day, this time of the week, to get those the support to the agency that's involved here. Hopkins, I'm sure, is being supported very well right now. It's more difficult, of course, weekends, nights, et cetera, to call those crime scene investigators out where they're responding from home. Today, I'm sure it was a quick response because most of those folks are at work right now.
And you know, I mentioned, unfortunately, in your 30 plus years in St. Paul, you've dealt with these situations. This is an apparent murder-suicide. How does investigating an apparent murder-suicide differ from, you know, a usual homicide investigation?
Well, with a homicide investigation, normally you'll have a suspect that you are trying to apprehend, and then try to get confessions, get as much information as you possibly can from the suspect that you get in custody. But in a case like this, of course, the suspect is deceased. So it actually, again, makes it a little more difficult to determine the motive in these cases, which is why uncovering the data from computers, cell phones, et cetera, the history, looking at potential court orders or what's going on in the family that would cause this type of conflict, and mental illness, et cetera. All of those factors come into play when investigators are trying to, again, answer those questions to make sure that the family members that are still alive have the answers, and certainly the community to make sure that they maintain confidence in the criminal justice system and those answers are brought to light.
Help us understand the command structure and how that comes together.
Again, I'm so sorry, Courtney, that you said something about the structure.
That's okay. Command structure. Talk to me about the command structure that's likely in place right now in Hopkins.
Well, certainly, as you saw, Chief Johnson's on scene. He is the point on this investigation. It's very obviously a very high-profile incident that will most likely have some national attention on this. So he is the incident commander until and if he relieves that the incident commander duty to somebody of lesser rank or in other agencies, I'm sure he's going to continue to be the point in leading. All of the police department is working collaboratively with partnering agencies, and he'll follow it all the way through to the end.
What about securing the crime scene? I mean, right now we're still seeing the yellow tape up. They're saying this is still an active investigation that could go into the night. How important is it for them right now to secure that crime scene? And how does having the perpetrator be deceased impact the investigation?
Well, the scene will be held for enough time where they can gather all of the information, take the photos that are necessary, gather any digital evidence, anything that, again, leads to the answering the questions as to why this happened and what happened at that moment. So that crime scene may be up for a day, may be up for 2 days, but one thing law enforcement has learned over the years is if you are questioning yourself whether you should keep the crime scene up, you always lean on the side of keeping it up long enough to make sure you have all of the evidence that's needed, because sometimes you don't understand all of the evidence that is present there until the active investigation is going on behind the scenes. Investigators are talking with family members, friends, family, etc. So information continues to come in at all hours, at all times during these investigations. So I'm sure you'll see the Hopkins Police Department, in cooperation with crime scene processors, keep that up just as long as they need to.
And what about the victims? I mean, we know that there were 6 children in the daycare, in addition to the 7th child that was killed. And then we also had a parent who walked into the active scene. So we have victims who experienced this trauma. In your experience, how does law enforcement, how are they dealing with those victims behind the scenes right now?
Well, what they're doing right now is making sure that they're reaching out to all of the support mechanisms possible for those children. Certainly their family members will have been notified, the parents, etc. But making sure that those kids have the constant care that they need is going to be critically important. These wounds don't heal with time. It's something that's really burned into the minds, again, whether you're a first responder or somebody who's witnessed a tragic event like this. And being so young, there are a lot of unanswered questions. We don't know how the minds of these children are going to work, and they need to have all of the resources possible to minimize the lifelong damage that they are going to endure.
What are the next 24 to 48 hours going to look like there in Hopkins?
Well, over the next 24 to 48 hours, you'll continue to see that crime scene stay up again as long as is needed to make sure that every bit of evidence is gathered from that home. There will be continuous conversations and collaboration between the law enforcement agency partners who are there to support not just the Hopkins Police Department, but the community at large. Again, this is a smaller community of approximately 30,000, maybe less. It's a very active, a very collaborative community. We've actually worked with the Hopkins Police Department with one of our projects. This is a very community-centered police department, so they're going to be working with their community partners, schools, et cetera, to make sure that everybody's receiving the resources that they need to help navigate the trauma and the emotions that come with such a serious incident like this.
All right, former St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell, we so appreciate your insight and your time today. I know we're going to bring you back on in the 4 o'clock hour after we have this press conference that's supposed to take place at 4 p.m. We so appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for the work that you do. Have a good day.
All right. I'm going to send it back to Randy and Kelsey, but some really good insight there from the former police chief as he's been in these situations, unfortunately, probably more times than he would like to admit.
Yeah, you can see it in his face. It's never something that he wants to talk about. He is very good at sort of peeling back some of those layers and letting people understand how the process works, what law enforcement has to go through, but which, by the way, is traumatic for them in a situation like this. It's one thing covering crime, it's one thing investigating crime, it's another thing to have to walk in and see and hear and calm children. It's just a whole different situation.
And for law enforcement, EMS, anybody who works in domestic violence, a story like today just stops you in your tracks because it is so tragic. And we know from our reporters who were on the scene, one of the parents of a child who goes to this child care said that this was a tumultuous relationship. Police have also confirmed that. And a parent received a message from the child care provider this morning saying it is, quote, crazy here today. Don't bring your child here today. And police have also confirmed that there was some type of history, not elaborating, but we know that that this daycare provider had told people that she was feeling like she was in a dangerous situation and was going to close the child care in 2 weeks, and we've confirmed that with police as well.
It's unfortunate because we have so many situations like this where there is help out there for people on both ends of that spectrum, be it the perpetrator or the victim in this particular case. So it's just unfortunate that help doesn't get to people before something as tragic as this that involves a child and other children. All right, we're going to send you another break. Again, we've got more coming up here. Again, there's a 4 o'clock press conference. We should get much more information then as well as this investigation continues.
We'll be right back.
Coming up on 3 o'clock, you are part of our breaking news coverage here of a tragic domestic situation that occurred in Hopkins about 9 o'clock this morning at a daycare, the Brown Bear Daycare. It's on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North. There, 2 adults and a child tragically perished. We believe it is a murder-suicide, and police are investigating as such.
Yeah, police have said that these are all members of the same family, and this was an in-home daycare. Came across at 9 o'clock this morning as a stabbing at a daycare, and that certainly sounded the alarms. Lots of law enforcement descending on this home on Tyler Avenue in Hopkins. And again, the daycare provider and what police have described as her husband and their child killed in this domestic murder-suicide. There were other children in the home, though, that go to this daycare, 6 other children. They were not hurt, and we are told that they were young children, and some of our reporters at the scene also saw young children being taken out of the home. It was a parent dropping off a child who apparently alerted police to this morning. And then we know through our reporters that one of the parents of a child received a message from the daycare provider today saying, don't bring your child here. It is, quote, crazy. And this parent says that she knew that there had been a tumultuous relationship between the couple prior to this happening.
Police have blocked off that area. Again, it's Tyler Street between 2nd Street and Lake Street. The investigation is well underway. It is now considered a crime scene for obvious reasons. There's also multiple agencies there that will be conducting this investigation. Police did not release much details about the nature of the deaths. Initial reports had it as a stabbing, but beyond that, we really don't know. We expect more information to come out in a 4 o'clock news conference. In fact, our Mike Manzoni is at the Hopkins City Hall for us right now. Mike, it's our understanding that that is where the next briefing will happen about an hour from now, likely to include Police Chief Brent Johnson.
Yeah, as well as other city officials, Randy. We heard from investigators earlier today, shortly after this happened. We will get another briefing at that news conference within the next hour or so. You can see they're actually setting up for it right now. They have the lectern there, and that is where officials will be speaking, presumably giving us some new details about this. But as you've mentioned, what we know so far, 2 adults and 1 child are dead. All members, investigators say, of the same family. This all started with a 911 call just after 9 o'clock this morning from a parent who showed up to drop off their children. Investigators say that parent witnessed whatever happened and then called 911, and then police went out there and found this horrifying scene. The 2 adults and the child who died, as I mentioned, are members of the same family. Investigators say that they believe that the man in this situation killed the woman and the child before taking his own life. 6 other kids were inside this in-home daycare at the time, but were unharmed. And investigators tell us that they have all since been reunited with their families. So that is what we know now. Presumably investigators do have some new details to share with us, and that is why they are holding another news conference within the next hour or so, less than an hour from now. And we will be here for that, and we'll carry it live for you.
All right, Mike, we appreciate that. And again, as Mike pointed out, multiple agencies will be involved in this investigation. It is such a tragic situation involving a young child and the domestic issues between a parent, between 2 parents, and it is heading in a direction of a very tragic situation in Hopkins.
Domestic violence situations are among the most dangerous that law enforcement encounter, and they're the most dangerous for people to be involved in too. They're unpredictable, violent. There are resources out there, but they are just very difficult situations to navigate. If you are in one of those situations, there are resources out there for you, but it is so difficult to just navigate the emotional toll that this takes on a family. And so we're speaking with former Police Chief Todd Axtell about just law enforcement protocol in general in these cases. But when you have a domestic that you're responding to, it is hard to negotiate as police officers and hard to get those scenes under control too.
So it's a little bit after 3 o'clock, as you know. I'm going to take you back a few hours to the last press briefing when Hopkins Police Chief Brent Johnson was really very new on the scene. Only 2 hours had elapsed between the time that it happened and the time that he addressed some reporters near the scene. I want to play some of that for you so you can kind of get a sense for what they knew at the time. And again, this was about 11 o'clock this morning.
We're here this morning due to a tragic incident occurring on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Hopkins police and multiple agencies responded to a domestic situation at an in-home daycare. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased male, female, and juvenile victim. There were other children present within the daycare, and we were able to get them out of the daycare and reunify them with their parents. At this time, there's no outstanding threats in the community. This is an isolated incident, and we are continuing to investigate it throughout the day and probably evening. I can provide you more information as we gather the information throughout the day.
Was this family?
All the victims appear to be a part of one family.
How many kids were inside the home when it happened?
There were 7 children within the daycare. One is deceased.
Can you give an approximate age of that child?
I honestly do not know.
Were there any other injuries besides the 3 that are deceased?
There were no other injuries to any other children inside the daycare.
Chief, is this a house that has been known to y'all, or is there any history with this couple that you know of?
At this point, I do not have that information.
Chief, what time did this happen?
This happened just after 9 this morning.
Was the person who perpetrated the attack one of the deceased, or do we know where they are?
We believe the perpetrator is deceased.
Is the perpetrator the male or the female?
We believe it's the male.
What's the relationship of the adults who were deceased to the daycare, if any, or to the home?
It's believed to be the daycare owners.
Do they live there?
We believe so, yes.
Both of them?
Yes.
Are they, what's their relationship, husband, wife?
I honestly do not know the marital status of them, or if they're partners. I don't know at this point.
But the child that was killed is their child?
Believed to be their child, yes.
Can you just talk about the gravity of this situation, dealing with something like this, and then also having other people's children in the home at this time that this happened?
Well, this is a horrific, tragic situation for any community, especially here in Hopkins, where we don't see this type of crime. It's a rarity here in Hopkins. And we're a very safe community, and the impact is felt not only here but elsewhere for every parent who has a child in a daycare setting or anywhere where they don't have immediate control over their child. So yes, it's heartbreaking.
Chief, I'm sorry if I missed this. Was this a stabbing? What was the weapon involved here?
At this time, we are still trying to determine the weapons involved, and we'll release that at a later date.
Anything about the nature of the injuries?
No, at this point, I can't tell you.
How were police notified about this, and what sort of response did you guys have right away?
Our response was due to a parent of one of the daycare children who had arrived to drop off their children.
Did they witness it?
I believe so.
What are the ages of the range of the children there and the deceased?
They were all very, very young children. So I don't have their ages at this point.
Under 5?
It was somewhere around that age or less.
Do we know if there was any no contact, domestic restraining order, anything like that involved in this couple?
Again, we're trying to dive into the background here, but initially our goal was to get here to protect the scene as quick as possible with multiple agencies. That's why I had a very large response. And at that point, the goal is just to preserve the scene and make sure that everyone was safe. Render aid as quick as possible.
Sorry, are the kids all back with their parents now?
Yes, all the children have been reunified with their parents, and that's why this took so long to come out here and tell me this.
Can you just tell me again your reaction? I mean, you hit on it a little bit, that this really is a nightmare situation for a parent. You drop your kid off at daycare, and then you find out this happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's no worse scenario than this, where you drop off your child to somewhere you think is safe, and you get that phone call. I think we can all relate who have children and those who don't, that this is just a tragic situation anywhere in the world, let alone here in Hopkins. And again, this is a rarity, and we will continue to investigate it as thorough and transparent as possible.
Chief, 2 questions here. Maybe too early. Do we know, did the perpetrator take his own life?
Preliminarily, we believe that to be the case.
Okay. And how are your officers holding up too? I mean, this is, not just for the community. This has got to be traumatic for them as well.
The initial officers on scene, this was a tragic situation for them as well, and I can see on the look on their faces that this was one of those ones that you'll remember throughout your entire career, if not life.
Do you have any expectations about when you'll have other updates, and will it be happening here at the scene or someplace else? Or?
I was hoping to do one at 4 o'clock today at City Hall. I also have Mayor Hanlon from the city here present with us today, and we'll put out more information as we gather the intelligence from the scene.
I know you're still working at one last, if you know, is this a licensed daycare? Do you have any idea?
I do not have that information.
Did the suspect shoot himself did he shoot or was he stabbed?
At this point in time, I can't tell you that information. We'll be able to tell you later this afternoon, but there's 3 deceased individuals in the house, all believed to be related.
Did the husband live at the house at the time?
I don't have that information.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chief.
We got some
Did the mayor want to say a couple words?
Did you want to say a couple words, Mayor? Do you guys want?
Yeah.
Anything?
Hang on. Hey, guys, we got the mayor coming. Mayor, why don't you come on right up.
You want to start by just introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Patrick Hanlon. I'm the mayor of Hopkins. Obviously, this is a really fresh incident, so we are focused on letting the police do their job and get the details of the situation. This community is reeling. It's a small community. We're only 20,000 people, but we operate as a small community, and everyone knows each other. There are no strangers in this community, so we are all reeling with this information right now as a community, and so grateful for the different departments that have come out from across the West Metro here and immediately to lend a hand in this situation. So just grateful for the police work that's going on right now and reeling from a really tragic incident. So thank you.
Anything else you want to add here? I mean, this is obviously horrific for anybody.
Yeah, this is, I think the first and foremost is to know that there's not an ongoing threat. I think when you see a lot of police cars in our neighborhood and a lot of folks reacting and responding, to know that there's not an additional threat to our community. But yes, we are all just reeling from this tragic incident that's going on in our city right now.
So you've been listening to 2 of the city officials there in Hopkins. First, Police Chief Brent Johnson laying out what they knew at that time, about 11 o'clock this morning in terms of that incident. And then Hopkins Mayor Patrick Hanlon there most recently, sort of to encapsulate some of what they said there. The mayor making a point that this is a self-contained incident, a dramatic and tragic murder-suicide as it appears right now, according to the police chief. No one else is at risk here in this situation, but there's certainly a lot of trauma involved with 6 other small children in the daycare, the Brown Bear Daycare. Again, that's in the 200 block of Tyler Street North in Hopkins.
Yeah, and the way the call came in and that information then flowing to parents of those children who were inside that house, you can imagine the fear that they must have been feeling. That news conference was earlier today around the lunch hour, so we do have a couple of updates to what the police chief was saying. First of all, we do know that the suspect in this is deceased, and they said he took his own life. We still don't know what weapon was involved, but it came in as a call for a stabbing. And then the police chief talking about the unknown history of the family that's involved. This was very early on, just maybe 2.5 hours after they received that initial call, and they don't have that full picture. But police have since confirmed for us that the daycare provider, the woman was closing the daycare at the end of the month, so in just 2 weeks, and that there had been a history of a tumultuous relationship. And one of the parents who also brought their child to this daycare received a message from the daycare provider this morning that it was not a good day to bring the child there. And so there was something going on this morning prior to the call from a parent who was dropping off a child.
This is, as you can imagine, a multi-agency investigation now. I want to read to you something that the Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty released following it. She said, "We're aware of this morning's tragic and devastating incident in Hopkins, and we're working with Hopkins police as they investigate it. Our office's Victim Services Division, which becomes very important, is prepared to support the individuals impacted by this incident." And she goes on to say, "We will provide further updates when available." Essentially, she's saying they're going to provide, the county then would provide help to those other parents, the other children if necessary, anybody else who was affected or was involved in this situation at all at the time that it occurred and after. So that is the situation at this moment in time. As Kelsey pointed out, we are expecting more information, possibly identities, but certainly maybe more understanding of how this occurred at a 4 o'clock press conference that's at the Hopkins City Hall.
Yeah, and situations of domestic violence are situations where families do live in fear. They are very difficult situations for law enforcement. And then we are talking about a situation today where there are young children in this home who witnessed this crime, some of them very young, but some of them may be close to school age. So we're going to be talking with a child psychologist about the impact and how the resources that are available and what parents can do to talk to their children as well. Domestic violence is it's a terrifying and difficult situation for communities to deal with and respond to. But we are going to take a break, and we will be right back. And welcome back to our continuing coverage of this breaking news happening this morning around 9 a.m. in Hopkins at an in-home daycare center. 2 adults, 1 child dead in what police have described as a murder-suicide. 2 adults, a child, all in the same family at an in-home daycare center where children were present.
It's hard to imagine what some of those children may have gone through. We're hoping that they didn't see this or experience this in any way, but as the police chief said, they were in the daycare at the time, and so we just don't know. But on the outside chance that they did see something that is dramatic and traumatic, or heard something, there's going to be some help offered and certainly some help needed.
So we want to go to Courtney Godfrey, who is joining us with a child psychologist as well. And Courtney, you just spoke with former St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell a little bit ago about the law enforcement side of this, but there's also this emotional toll that certainly takes on adults and children in this case. So we'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, just trying to bring in a variety of experts here who can kind of dig deeper as we cover this tragedy in Hopkins. Yes, we have a family psychologist on the line, Elizabeth Kittleson. She's the clinical director of Carnelia Mental Health. Elizabeth, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Elizabeth, when you think of these 6 children who were in the home at the time and may have witnessed something tragic, something horrific, what's your main concern?
So one of the things we think about immediately is their physical safety, which it sounds like they are now physically safe. They're out of that situation. But the thing I paid attention most in this case is the emotional safety. Imagine being in a caregiver's home, a space like this that feels so safe day to day, and all of a sudden a tragic experience happens. I'm very concerned for their emotional safety, how dysregulating it is to experience a safe place is now no longer safe. And the loss of a loving caregiver as well, whether they witnessed it, heard it, or just were in the same space, that emotional safety is now gone.
What are some signs of stress or trauma that parents of these particular children can look for that could be a signal that these children are struggling with what they may have witnessed?
So, it depends on age, and I'm hearing some things around they might have been under 5, but also school age. And so what we'll see is for the younger, we're going to see kind of sleep regressions, toilet difficulties all of a sudden, big emotions and tantrums. And for the older school age, we again might see big emotions, but more maybe isolation, shutting down, withdrawing. It can depend on the age, but that's where we want to look for as parents is behavior rather than them vocalizing what's going on.
So how do you talk to a child that's young, under the age of 5, about a situation like this?
That's a great question. We would say not a lot of talking. It's really important that for parents, you create opportunities for your child to take them and share what's on their mind. But an opportunity could look like play, bringing out some dolls and toys and just engaging in imaginative play. And your child might, through that play, share some more things about what happened or the experience. So as a parent, it's important to not expect direct conversation, but to create opportunities to share and express. That can be through art, play, music, movies or TV shows, taking that opportunity when they're ready. And we want to follow their lead.
And what about teens or preteens who have access to the internet, maybe are watching, the news right now? They're learning about this incident. They're seeing it on their phone. They aren't involved directly, but they know that this horrible accident happened. How do you talk to those older children about this incident when they've heard about it through their friends or through the news?
That's a great question as well. And what I'm reminded of is just almost a year ago now, the Annunciation shooting. As parents and kiddos in our community, we're having to have a lot of hard conversations. And what's really lovely about this is there's some really great resources online. Sesame Street has done some really beautiful things about violence. And so there's lots of resources for parents available if they need them. But for kids or individuals who are just hearing this violence, it's important to just talk about what comes up. Talk about our feelings, talk about our fears, our concerns. And then as parents, it's really important to demonstrate how you can be a safe person. While we can't control what's happening outside in our environment, how do we maintain safety as a home? What are our expectations for safety in our home? And how can we be safe people for each other?
Yeah, that's great advice. I know I struggled myself after enunciation on how to describe it to my own kids. So great advice. When we think about the kids that were in this home, the trauma that they may experience might not show up immediately. How do you, in your clinical experience, can this trauma show up long term?
Yes. So what we can find is that people work through the trauma however it needs to kind of flush out, right? And so if there's lots of opportunities and safe situations, they might have some regression in some behavior, but then they might appear like everything's okay. You can also see trauma reactions later on and sometimes even into adulthood. We can work with individuals in adulthood who've experienced a trauma later on in their previous history, and then now they're concerned about safety when they go places, right? So we can show up throughout their lifespan, especially if it's happening pre-verbal. So one of the things that's important for us as parents to watch out for is what's pretty typical, and then where do we want to be accessing more support if we're having difficulty with going places, with relationships, or fearful to leave our house. That's when we want to get some support involved.
I'm curious if there's any research that shows how long a child can hold on to memories, because we might be talking, toddlers, babies in this situation.
That's a really great topic. And what we're finding is memory stored in very different ways. So some people who've experienced early childhood trauma won't have verbal ways to express it or even specific chronological memories, but it's still stored in their body. They'll have somatic experiences, intense reactions, high cortisol experiences. So it doesn't necessarily mean that these children will specifically have a memory that they can recall, but it might be still stored in their body and show up as a trauma response depending on situations. And so, yeah, research is showing that it might not be a specific memory, but it will still hold.
If Hopkins police was consulting with you and they were asking your advice, what would your advice be to those investigators who, showed up to the scene and now maybe need to question the parents, need to hold the kids longer? How would you advise them to proceed with these victims?
So we want to proceed that in an age-appropriate way. We cannot show up in an interrogating way expecting conversation here. We want to show up age-appropriate. And I'm sure that the police force has probably resources who can operate in terms of beautiful play therapy, non-directive opportunities for kiddos and families to discuss, but in a really safe way that doesn't feel scary or re-traumatizing. So we want to really look at what's age appropriate for the kiddos that were involved.
Such a tragic situation, and your insight is really much appreciated. Elizabeth Kittleson, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm going to send it back to Randy and Kelsey. That was Elizabeth Kittleson, Clinical Director of Carnelia Mental Health.
All right, very valuable information for anybody who was listening, may have children involved in situations that are traumatic, and certainly, I can't expect that the children involved today, but hopefully they will get the help that they need. Undoubtedly, they will have heard or saw something.
Yeah. Well, in a broader sense too, this information, Courtney, is so helpful because if you have experienced trauma, if your children have experienced trauma, you realize kids don't have the words to articulate what they're feeling. They don't even know how to connect maybe what they're feeling to something in particular. And so understanding that with children and knowing that there's a special way that you need to communicate with them, and also realizing maybe this conversation will help some people out there realize that they do need to reach out for more support. I know I've struggled with that. I want to talk to my kids sometimes like they're adults, like tell me what's wrong. And it doesn't work like that.
And I think what was really important about that conversation is she said, don't push. If you're not getting answers and they're not talking, don't push. Just give them the space to talk about it. This is an experience and a trauma that will likely follow these children for their entire lives. As you heard her say, research supports that even babies and toddlers may not remember the event, but they'll carry it with them.
All right, Courtney, thank you. We want to bring our viewers back into the situation here again. We've been covering all day long this tragic situation in Hopkins at the Brown Bear Daycare. That's on the 200 block of Tyler Street, between 2nd Street and Lake Street there in Hopkins. We also know there's going to be a 4 o'clock press conference where more information will likely be gathered as well. We are also hearing that Burnsville police will be there. There may be some connection between this case and another crime committed in Burnsville at some point today as well. We're hoping to get more information on that, or at least confirm more information on that when we get it.
Yeah, let's bring you up to speed on this new development now that involves a separate crime scene in Burnsville. We're learning from our reporter, Mike Manzoni, that there's a working assumption now by investigators that the Burnsville homicide is connected to this Hopkins murder-suicide. And so what we know about the Burnsville situation from earlier today is that a 911 caller said that they found a family member at a residence. So the call came in around 12:30 that somebody had been found at a residence in Burnsville. So again, there are 2 now crime scenes that they are working under the assumption are connected.
Yeah, and the time frame is interesting to note. The 12:30 could have been just when something was discovered, not necessarily in conjunction with the timing of the other incident in Hopkins. So some of those details will get fleshed out, we hope, at this 4 o'clock press conference, but this is new information that there may be another crime involved in this domestic murder-suicide that we've been covering all day long in Hopkins as well.
So maybe we'll get a chance to talk with Mike Manzoni before this 4 o'clock news conference, just to see what he's hearing ahead of this news conference and which law enforcement agencies are going to be speaking. At least that would give us some indication. But this is new information. This Hopkins case that we have been covering since early this morning.
Occurred around 9:15 or so. Yeah.
And that's a domestic situation at an in-home daycare that we've been following. This is the first that we've been able to confirm that they are also looking at this second crime scene now with somebody who's deceased. And we're told that Burnsville city officials will be at this news conference at 4 o'clock as well.
All right, we're going to send you to break. Much more to come after that break here, covering our breaking news out of Hopkins and now out of Burnsville. Going back to our breaking news coverage, we are covering a tragic incident out of Hopkins, a murder-suicide at a daycare, the Brown Bear Daycare, in the 200 block of Tyler Street between 2nd and Lake up there. Tragic. There were other kids, small children in this daycare at the time of this incident. That's been an hourly news story as details start to come out. We do know that it's an isolated incident there. That neighborhood was said not to be in any type of harm at that point. But we're now also learning that this case is likely connected to one in Burnsville.
Yeah, and that's a new element to this entire investigation, and we expect to learn more in about 25 minutes at a news conference in Hopkins. So the Hopkins crime scene is a domestic situation where police told us earlier today that this was involving members of the same family at the male, the perpetrator, and we know from people who brought their children there to this daycare that this was a tumultuous relationship between the couple involved here, and that this had been an ongoing. There was knowledge by police too that there had been a history. The scene in Burnsville now, that's something we don't know a whole lot about, except that a call came in around 12:30 that somebody had found a family member. And that is a homicide investigation, and Burnsville officials will be at this news conference.
Yeah, in fact, Mike Manzoni's been following us right along with us. Mike is at the Hopkins City Hall where that press conference will occur in about 25 minutes or so. Mike, a new development in this case. Tell us what you know about it.
Randy and Kelsey, we are less than 30 minutes away from that news conference now here at Hopkins City Hall, where we are expecting to get some new information. And within just the last few minutes or so, a city official told us that the Burnsville police chief will also be joining Hopkins city officials to discuss some developments in this case. An official said, and I'm quoting here, that it is the working assumption now that there is a connection between the daycare murder-suicide that happened this morning and that homicide scene over in Burnsville. As you mentioned, we don't really know a lot about that, only that someone was discovered dead around 12:30. So the timing is interesting because it would have been about 3.5 hours after the murder-suicide. But Randy, as you pointed out earlier, that could have just been when the 911 call came in. Unclear when exactly the person who was found dead there died. 2 adults and 1 child are dead, all members of the same family. Investigators say this all started as a domestic incident. The call came in just after 9 o'clock this morning. Hopkins police went out there to the Brown Bear daycare and they found 3 people dead. Investigators say at this point it appears that the man is the suspect who it appears killed a woman and then a child before taking his own life. A parent who arrived to drop off their children is the one who apparently saw this or saw the aftermath of it and called police. 6 other children were inside that daycare at the time, though fortunately they were not harmed, and investigators say they have since been reunited with their families. So the latest development now, we are hearing that the murder-suicide at the home daycare here in Hopkins this morning is somehow connected to a homicide scene over in Burnsville. We are expecting to get some new information in the next 30 minutes or so. There is a news conference that's going to be happening here outside City Hall. You can see the lectern there. They're setting up for it now. We are expecting to hear from the Hopkins police chief and other city officials, and we are now hearing that the Burnsville police chief will be joining them to discuss whatever that update is. Of course, we'll be here for it and carry it live for you. Back to you guys.
Okay.
All right. It is an ongoing story, no doubt about it.
And we don't know anything about the victim in the Burnsville situation. This is we knew that there was an investigation going on in Burnsville today while we were covering this story out of Hopkins. But this is the first that we're learning that these 2 scenes are now being investigated as if they are connected. So we don't know anything yet about the victim in this Burnsville situation, just that it was at a home. And we do have a location of that around Maple Court in Burnsville. And again, unknown when this could have happened, but the 911 call came in at 12:30 that somebody had discovered a family member deceased inside that home.
The words from the Hopkins city official as they're setting up this press conference at 4 o'clock is they're working under a working assumption of a connection between the daycare murder-suicide case in Hopkins and the stabbing homicide in Burnsville. So that's really all we have to go on. We do not know any details. Again, we were covering this and following it as 2 separate incidents. until just a few moments ago. So this is something that will be new to us as we listen to that press conference as well.
And this situation of domestic violence at the Hopkins location, we know from police and also from a parent who brought their child there that the woman, the daycare provider, and this is a licensed daycare, in-home daycare, was planning to close this daycare facility in just 2 weeks at the end of the month. So certainly there were things that were changing about this daycare as well while all of this is happening. We don't have any names of the victims yet, and we're still working and probably going to learn more at 4 o'clock about just what investigators have learned today.
Let me try and piece this together for you. As it occurred and as we followed it beginning around 9 o'clock, Hopkins Police Chief Brent Johnson said officers responded to the report of a domestic situation. Again, we said that was shortly after 9 a.m. He confirmed that in his 11 o'clock press conference at the Brown Bear Daycare. Again, that's on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. When police arrived there, they found a man, a woman, and a child dead in that home. All 3 victims are, as we now know, family members, either husband, wife, partner, child, and we do believe the child is their child. There were 6 other children present at the daycare at the time of the incident. Police Chief Johnson said no other children were injured. Those children have been reunited with their parents or others shortly after the incident. Officers were able to get the children out of the home shortly after 9 o'clock as well. Police Chief went on to say that a parent who arrived there to drop off their child was the one that called 911, either having witnessed some of what had occurred or witnessed the scene afterward. We don't have clarity on that one just yet. That area is blocked off around Tyler Street between 2nd and Lake Street, and it is now considered an active crime scene.
Yeah, we don't know how long those children were inside that home when this happened, but we do know the daycare provider sent out a text message to one of the parents saying, don't bring your child here today. So all of this may have happened in a short period of time, but it was essentially a rescue situation once police arrived and they realized what had happened and they needed to get these children out of this home. Again, 6 children were at that daycare, all of very young ages, and this is a smaller daycare center that was only by state regulation allowed to have up to about 10 children.
There is some designated help for anybody involved in this situation, as you can imagine. In fact, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty put out a statement shortly after she released this, and this is a fairly common protocol in a situation as tragic and traumatic as this. And her words are, we're aware of this morning's tragic and devastating incident in Hopkins. We're working with Hopkins Police as they investigate. This is also a multi-agency investigation. Now BCA will be involved if they're not already. Our office Victim Services Division, that's the one that will help those who have been affected by this, is prepared to support the individuals impacted by the incident, and they will be providing more details as they become available for those resources as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say police, EMS, fire, domestic violence resources, they all work tirelessly and quietly behind the scenes with thousands of cases like this every year. You know, this domestic violence is a very complicated and also very dangerous area for law enforcement to wade into.
You know, we have our resources here at Fox 9 working on this from all angles. The one thing that we will never get an answer to is why in a situation like this. We can put together the pieces of how it occurred and what happened after that and slightly before that, but the whys are never really fully answered in a situation like this.
All right.
We're going to send you to break. Much more to come here. Again, that 4 o'clock presser will provide more details. That's coming up in about 18 minutes. Stay right here.
And welcome back to our ongoing coverage of this domestic violence murder-suicide at the Brown Bear Daycare Center in Hopkins around 9 o'clock this morning. Investigators still have that scene cordoned off, and they are continuing to investigate what led up to this and what happened at this in-home daycare center. There will be a news conference at 4 o'clock today, but what we do know is that 2 adults and a child, all of the same family, have been killed in this apparent murder-suicide.
We're learning also in the last few minutes that there is a presumed connection between this case, the one that Kelsey just referenced in Hopkins, and what appears to be a stabbing homicide in Burnsville as well. The connection is a little nebulous at this point. We're not quite sure, but police are confirming that there is a connection. In fact, Burnsville police will be at this 4 o'clock press conference. So that tells you a lot about some sort of connection here. I think we have, yep, there's the video of the scene. This is seen in Burnsville of that stabbing. That one was called in about 12:30
right.
this afternoon, which is after the Hopkins daycare incident, which is around shortly after 9 a.m. All we know is that's when it was called in, not necessarily that's when it may have happened.
That somebody discovered a family member dead at this residence. We have a press release from Burnsville that just came in, and we know Burnsville police will be at this news conference at 4 o'clock with Hopkins officials. So let me just read this. I'm reading this for the first time. So it's titled, Burnsville Police Investigating Homicide Incident Connected to Hopkins Investigation. On Wednesday, August 12th at approximately 12:23, Burnsville police officers were dispatched to a home in the area of Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue following a report of a stabbing. When officers arrived, they located an adult female who was deceased. The incident is being investigated as a homicide. Investigators believe the Burnsville incident is connected to an incident that occurred in Hopkins earlier this morning. There is no indication of any threat to the public. This is an active and ongoing investigation, and we recognize that an incident of this nature is deeply concerning and difficult for our community. Our thoughts are with the family and loved ones of the victim, as well as everyone impacted by these tragic events.
So that is, yeah, this is getting extremely complicated. I hope we get some more answers coming up here in just a few minutes at 4 o'clock. Again, if you're just joining us, 2 cases, 2 homicide cases, murder, suicide in Hopkins, homicide case in Burnsville, somehow connected. We believe in both incidences, at least from what we've been able to figure out, both involve a stabbing. Yeah, I mean, we're, you know, this is stuff that's happening minute by minute now, and it's tragic with every new bit of information we get.
Yeah, incredibly tragic, and we do know that the Hopkins crime scene was called in as a stabbing as well, and that the female daycare provider there had reached out to one of the parents who brought their child there, saying that, do not bring your child here this morning. It's crazy. This had been an ongoing tumultuous relationship inside that home. But beyond that, because this is an investigation that is just a few hours old, investigators haven't released much more other than to confirm to our reporters that they knew there was a history with this particular couple, and that they were able to get all of the children who were at that daycare out of the home unharmed.
I want to get you kind of up to speed with everything we know about Hopkins from the police chief, Brent Johnson, who addressed reporters about 11 o'clock this morning with the latest information then about 2 hours after the murder-suicide. Let's listen into his press briefing. He gives really good details about what he and others saw when they arrived on the scene.
We're here this morning due to a tragic incident occurring on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Hopkins police and multiple agencies responded to a domestic situation at an in-home daycare. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased male, female, and juvenile victim. There were other children present within the daycare, and we were able to get them out of the daycare and reunify them with their parents. At this time, there's no outstanding threats in the community. This is an isolated incident, and we are continuing to investigate it throughout the day and probably evening. I can provide you more information as we gather the information throughout the day.
Was this family?
All the victims appear to be a part of one family.
How many kids were inside the home when it happened?
There were 7 children within the daycare. One is deceased.
And there is the largest part of the tragedy of this whole situation is that there were 7 children inside that daycare when this occurred. One of those children also deceased as part of that family unit that, that all died either through a murder or suicide situation there. So as we watch this story unfold, we have to keep in mind that there are, 6 other families that are profoundly affected by this as well, and that is not even to begin to tap into what's happened in Burnsville, which is somehow connected to this case, but we don't know exactly how.
Yeah, just all of the pieces of this and what happened here today. We will probably get more information about the family connections at 4 o'clock and what has happened in Burnsville and what has happened in Hopkins, but an incredibly tragic situation. And I can give you just a little bit of information here about what we do know and what we've learned throughout the day. It was called in around 9 o'clock this morning by a parent who was dropping off a child at this in-home daycare center, the Brown Bear Daycare Center on Tyler Avenue in Hopkins. And that call came in as a stabbing. Investigators have not said yet just all of the details as to whether there was another weapon involved or not, but we do know that it was called in as a stabbing. That's the same as the Burnsville investigation right now, that was a stabbing as well. There is no threat to the public, according to law enforcement officials who are investigating both crime scenes right now, and investigators were aware of a history between the couple involved in this, the couple that is now deceased, and then the child who's part of this family unit as well. But other than that, there was no information that they could provide that indicated any sort of history of domestic violence.
We do have the address, I think, of that Burnsville issue as well.
Yes.
Hang on, I've got it.
If you don't, I've got it. It's Maple Island Road and Maple Island Court.
Yeah, and that call came in at 12:23 p.m. Again, that doesn't, all that tells us is that's when the call came in. Someone was discovered there deceased, presumably from stab wounds there, based on the reports that we're getting in from Burnsville police.
Right.
Again, this is a situation that is continuing to unfold. Right now you're looking at this is the Burnsville scene, I believe, also cordoned off, much like the scene at Tyler Street between 2nd Street and Lake Street in Hopkins, also cordoned off as well. These are active murder investigations, multiple agency investigations going on at the same time in different cities, but it will be collated to a certain degree at 4 o'clock in a press conference where both agencies, among others, I assume the BCA is now a part of this investigation as well. They might be present at this press conference as well with much more details. Yeah, let's check back in with the Hopkins officials. I know the mayor spoke earlier as well about the situation in Hopkins. I think we have Patrick Hanlon as well. He's the mayor of Hopkins. Let's listen to his comments. He's making these comments shortly after learning of what happened in Hopkins.
Obviously, this is a really fresh incident, so we are focused on letting the police do their job and get the details of the situation. This community is reeling. It's a small community. We're only 20,000 people, but we operate as a small community and everyone knows each other. There are no strangers in this community, so we are all reeling with this information right now as a community, and so grateful for the different departments that have come out from across the West Metro here and immediately to lend a hand in this situation. So just grateful for the police work that's going on right now and reeling from a really tragic incident. So thank you.
Anything else you want to add here? I mean, this is obviously horrific for anybody.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I think the first and foremost is to know that there's not an ongoing threat. I think when you see a lot of police cars in our neighborhood and a lot of folks reacting and responding, to know that there's not an additional threat to our community. But yes, we are all just reeling from this tragic incident that's going on in our city right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopkins Mayor Patrick Hanlon, not an ongoing threat. That is the word coming out of both Hopkins and Burnsville at this hour. The two cases now connected.
Yeah, and the 6 children who were inside this home when all of this happened, then law enforcement rescued them, brought them out of the home, reunited them with their families. And then as the day moved on, there was another crime scene that then surfaced in Burnsville. A family member discovering a loved one dead at a home in Burnsville. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about the Burnsville crime scene. At 4 o'clock in about 5 minutes, there will be a news conference at Hopkins City Hall. Burnsville officials will be there as well, and we will be taking that live here on Fox 9 and also on Fox Local. But the Burnsville incident, they say, is connected. Officers arrived. They located an adult female who was deceased. The incident is investigated as a homicide, and investigators believe the Burnsville incident connected to the Hopkins incident from earlier today. No indication of any threat to the public as well, but there's an active and ongoing investigation. This is, they say, deeply concerning and difficult for the community, the department leaders and neighbors, and anybody who's been involved in this investigation today.
So to the dynamics of how this unfolded this morning, we're learning some new details through the network of reporters that we have and others on the scene. It was interesting to note that we believe the daycare provider, the woman in this particular case, sent a text to another parent prior to what occurred there saying, not to bring your child to the daycare today. It was a crazy situation there today. And again, this is from the presumed person who was killed prior to the incident happening. Even with that said, one of the parents did arrive there with their child to drop it off, and that's where the 911 call came from.
Right. So, and what we're still expecting maybe with this news conference at 4 o'clock is that they will explain more of the details of who the victims are, because we don't have any names of the victims at this point, and then what may have happened in this case, what unfolded, and if there had been if there's any history of any legal cases in the court system involving this family, if there's any past efforts to reach out to try to get help. We do know the daycare provider did tell those families that she was closing the daycare in 2 weeks at the end of the month. So that and just what they've learned in terms of what happened at Burnsville, and if there could be potentially any other scene that they have to investigate as well.
Yeah, the time frames of these two incidents are somehow connected, but based on what we're getting out of Burnsville police, we don't know. The 12:30 call-in could have been well after the fact of whatever occurred there. We're presuming it happened before the Hopkins situation as well. So we're following all of that very closely. I'm going to send you to a quick break before we go to that press conference straight up at 4 o'clock. We'll be right back with as many details as we can gather, and then we'll pitch you to the 4 o'clock press conference where some of this will get cleared up.
daughter, I assume that's your granddaughter?
That's correct.
And her almost ex-boyfriend.
Correct.
The only reason you
in Hopkins at a daycare, the Brown Bear daycare there at the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North. What we do know at this point, 2 adults are dead, a child is dead, a female child is dead. We believe that they are a husband, wife, and their child.
And we are expecting a news conference to begin any minute in Hopkins, right outside of City Hall. And what we've learned throughout the day is that there was this apparent murder-suicide at an in-home daycare in Hopkins this morning. Then at 12:30, there was another crime scene discovered in Burnsville, where a family member found a female family member dead. Burnsville police are calling it a stabbing. And now police are saying these 2 crime scenes are connected. So we're expecting to hear from the police chief of Hopkins along with some Burnsville officials.
Yeah, City of Hopkins Police Chief Brent Johnson, City of Burnsville Police Chief Matt Smith, and the City of Hopkins Mayor Patrick Hanlon. We heard from Johnson and Hanlon earlier from Hopkins. They had a press conference around 11 a.m. this morning with the details that they had available to them for the public at that point, but we do know that there will be more details now based on the connection between a Burnsville homicide or perceived homicide and the murder-suicide in Hopkins.
Yeah, and they're saying the suspect this morning is the male.
On the scene there, so this is down the road at the City Hall, but a very sad story that we're following, and we'll take it out to you as soon as it begins here on Live Now from Fox. We do want to turn our attention.
I'm not sure. Okay, we're hearing some other audio. I apologize for that, and I just wanted to make sure that our mics were still on the air. But we are expecting this news conference to begin any moment now. We want to go ahead and take it live on Fox 9 and Fox Local.
To believe inflation and moving to the right direction.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Omot. I'm a communications consultant to the cities of Hopkins and Burnsville. We're here today on a tragic day. We wanted to bring this information to everybody at one time, showing the coordination and communications between the 2 cities to kind of piece this together. What was a very tragic day. We'll have both police chiefs come and make a statement, and then the mayor of Hopkins will make a brief statement as well. We'll take a few questions, and then we'll get back to caring for our community. With that, I'll turn it all over to the police chief of Hopkins, Brent Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I'm Police Chief Brent Johnson with the Hopkins Police Department. I want to begin by expressing my sincerest condolences to the victims, families, and Hopkins community, along with all the families who have been a part of this tragedy today. This is an extremely tragic event for Hopkins or for any community. The victims were all valued members of the Hopkins community. Any event involving the loss of life is a difficult process, but when children are involved, it's especially devastating. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected. What we know and we can tell you now is this morning at approximately 9 a.m., the Hopkins Police Department, in coordination with multiple other agencies, responded to a report of a stabbing at a residence operating as a home daycare in the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased 41-year-old male with a self-inflicted gunshot wound and a deceased 41-year-old female and 7-year-old female victim with stab wounds. They were all members of the same family. 6 other children at that time were present in the daycare, and they were all safely evacuated and physically unharmed and swiftly reunited with their families. At this time, there are no outstanding suspects and no ongoing threat to the public. At this time, the medical examiner has not released the names of the victims involved. They need to wait for pending family notification, and we expect that information to be available in the coming days. Again, this remains an active investigation, and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab is up there currently processing the scene. Again, I want to thank the many officers and agencies who responded and assisted on the scene to continue this investigation. As a part of the cooperation and communication between public safety departments, a link was made today to another tragedy down in Burnsville. Burnsville Police Chief Matt Smith will discuss that link in a moment. But before I turn it over, I just want to again express that our entire community is grieving the loss unnecessarily due to domestic violence. Hopkins is an extremely close-knit community, and we all mourn together. Please take care of your neighbors, families, and friends, and give your loved ones a hug when you go home tonight. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Burnsville Police Chief Matt Smith. I want to thank you for coming today and thank the public safety team from Hopkins for their cooperation, coordination, and communication with us over the past few hours. We believe tragedies in our two cities are linked, and I want to talk through the timeline in Burnsville. At approximately 12:23 p.m. today, Burnsville police were dispatched to a report of a stabbing in a home near Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue. Upon arrival, officers found one deceased individual. We believe it is a close family relative of the suspect in Hopkins. The deceased was a female, age 78. The suspect, we believe, had been recently living in that residence in Burnsville. Based on work between our officers and investigators with the Hopkins Police Department, we believe this tragedy and the tragedy in Hopkins are linked. We do not believe there's an ongoing threat to the community. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the neighbors, friends, and family of those affected by this today. The medical examiner has not released the name of the victim pending family notification. We expect that information to be available in the coming days. This remains an active investigation. We join the Burnsville and Hopkins communities in mourning these losses of life. When tragedies like these happen, they affect entire communities. I ask that we focus on our care and concern for each other. Lean on your family, friends, and neighbors over the coming days. I encourage residents to spend time acknowledging this loss and ensuring we care for each other. We will continue our investigation in coordination with the Hopkins Police Department. We now turn our care and concern for the community.
We'll take a few questions, and then I want to make sure the mayor has a few moments to speak. And so if you guys have questions of the chief.
Can the chief just walk us through a timeline a little bit more about how the discovery was made and then how that suspect made his way to Hopkins?
At this time, we don't have a timeline of events between Burnsville and Hopkins. We don't have a timeline between Hopkins and Burnsville at this point in time. We will be investigating that timeline, specifically determine, the method and causation of death and the timeline specifically in the future here. But that takes some time to figure that all out. So
can you say when the woman was likely killed in Burnsville?
I do not have that information. I know that's an active investigation down there, and they're going to have to determine that with the medical examiner.
Chief Johnson, earlier today you said that this was a family, and so can you confirm that this was a husband and wife that were found at the daycare and that was the daughter?
Yes, so it is their daughter, and it is a husband and wife. I don't know what their current living situation is. I don't know if he was still living there or not at the residence, but it was her father and her mother. And they're all family members who were victims of today's tragedy.
Is there anything more you can say about this location inside of this daycare incident, whether children were in the same room with them or if they were not having to witness this tragedy?
So there were 6 other children present within the home when this incident occurred. Where they were specifically at the time of the assault by the suspect, I am not sure of that.
With that Burnsville victim, was that the mother of the wife or the father? Is that something of those victims?
that husband and wife? Was that older female victim in Burnsville? How were they related to that couple?
At this point, we need to confirm the identity. So it is a family relative, but we should have that information shortly. When the medical examiner can release the names and the birth dates, then we can obviously update that information.
What, if any, previous interactions have you had with the suspect or the family or the daycare involved in this?
We have not had any police calls to that location or that daycare.
Does he have any criminal history, the gentleman involved?
I am not aware of his criminal history.
Was it a family member or an officer that had checked on this deceased woman in Burnsville? Like, who discovered this person?
I'll let Matt speak to that.
Yeah, that was a family member that called officers and reported the scene.
Matt, you said that you believe that the suspect was living at that residence at the time. Just confirming that that's correct.
That is what we've been told, yes.
Okay, were you told that by the other family member that called it in?
I'm not entirely sure where we got that information, but I know we were told that he was living there for at least a little bit of time.
Appreciating you're still putting that timeline together, it must be fair to say that the Burnsville incident happened prior to what happened in Hopkins.
That seems to be the case, but again, we don't have a timeline yet.
Did he leave any kind of note?
No, there was no note left behind.
And you recovered both a knife and, was it a handgun at the scene in Hopkins?
The actual weapons that were recovered right now, it's still an active investigation, and we're going to let the medical examiner and the crime lab process that information. The actual weapons will be obviously shared in a future time.
Can you share with us the state of the 911 caller who discovered the scene? How are they doing? And, what was that like to hear that 911 call?
Yeah, it was an individual who was actually dropping off their children at the location to receive daycare services, who encountered the situation, who may have witnessed some of the altercation inside the residence at that time. They called us and notified us of the situation.
What kind of contact was there with the dead man from the morning in Burnsville to Hopkins?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What kind of contact, if any, was there with the dead man from the morning in Burnsville to Hopkins?
We didn't have any contact whatsoever with him.
And you say we, is that local?
Us, Hopkins, and I don't believe Burnsville had any contact with the suspect in the last few hours prior to this.
The person at the daycare then called?
Correct.
Correct. And we are not aware of any prior calls to the address in Burnsville.
In regard to that 911 caller, are you saying that the altercation was unfolding when they called, or that they were already dead when that parent came to the home?
They witnessed the ongoings inside the residence at that time. So, yes, our witness clearly identified who the suspect was, who the perpetrator was, and that's why we can confirm that the suspect who is deceased is the one who victimized either his wife or ex-wife, I'm not sure again of the familial relationship, and his own daughter.
Were all three found in the same location on 50 floors?
No, the wife and child were located, I believe, in the basement area, and the suspect was located in the upper floor of the residence.
And where were the 6 children who were unharmed?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Where were the 6 children who were unharmed when this was all happening, and how were they doing now?
So they were in the basement of the residence at that time. That is where they enter the daycare, is through the basement. That is where the witness had observed what was going on inside the residence.
And just clarifying the wounds for the victims, everyone who you believe was a victim in this case suffered stab wounds versus the perpetrator was a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Correct.
A few more questions, and then I got to get back, and the mayor wants to say a few words. Any last questions for the police officers?
Just in terms of domestic violence, and just what does this say, I guess, in terms of this, even if Hopkins or cities are more less crime rates overall in these kinds of crimes, like what kind of message would you want to send out, I guess, in terms of this still being a big issue?
Well, sure. I would highly recommend that individuals who are experiencing domestic violence call 911 immediately. Reach out to your friends or families or neighbors. Report those incidents. We need to intervene in those types of situations, so there can be a no contact order issued and other remedies to that. But if you know someone who is experiencing that, definitely call 911. Could you please just repeat the ages of all involved? Yes, it's a 41-year-old male, 41-year-old female, and 7-year-old female victim, and a 78-year-old female. That's in Burnsville.
For clarity, the father was dropping off his child and witnessed what was going on. He went into that basement area where they have the daycare. That's where the other children were, and if he was able to witness something, that's where also that altercation was taking place, where the children were.
Correct. I just don't know the specific locations of every child inside the residence and what they actually saw or not. We can make assumptions on that, but again, this is a tragic day and a horrific scene for little children to witness, if they did witness this. And we just please try to respect the privacy of the families involved. I know some of them have already been contacted. I don't know how, but please respect their privacy with their children. They are grieving, and this is a tough day for them as well. Were there divorce proceedings at all for the couple? I don't have that information.
Do you mind speaking to when you discovered that these might be connected? And was it simply the suspect, or how did you sort of piece that together?
I don't think I can answer that right now, as it's part of the active investigation.
And just to be clear, any idea of a motive of any kind? If there's no prior contact, no history here, any idea of what led up to that?
Yeah, honestly, we do not have a motive. We will continue to do our investigation. We'll work on forensics and things like that to hopefully determine, any sort of motive or cause to this tragic incident.
Thank you. I want to bring up the Mayor of Hopkins, Mayor Patrick Hamlin.
Thank you all for coming out today. I want to reiterate some of the things that the police chief was saying, is that this is a tight-knit community. We don't have strangers in Hopkins. We all know each other. The ask for respect for the family and for the neighbors involved with this, I'd just like to echo that. This city has shed a lot of tears today over this incident, over this immense loss. It's tough to put into words what this loss is for our community. Losing a mother, losing a young child, and the children that potentially witnessed what they saw. It's also been a day I've been so grateful for all of the folks that have reached out. We've had the different police jurisdictions in any emergency, in any kind of crisis. It's amazing how the different jurisdictions that respond, St. Louis Park, all through Minnetonka, all through the West Metro. Just want to say a word of thanks on behalf of our city to all the different jurisdictions that responded today. To the 3 officers, a special thank you. For those that responded first on the scene. We talk about folks putting themselves into harm's way, but to face situations like they did today, which is probably most of our worst nightmares, is to walk into that situation and have to deal with that in their professional and personal lives. So a special thank you to them. I want to say a special thank you to, there's already been mental health professionals that have reached out that want to help in any way that they can with our communities, the chaplains that have been working to assist in helping people understand the unfathomable that happened here today. Daycares who have reached out to the families who now don't have a place tomorrow for their kids to go, and said that we'll take those kids in for free. That's the kind of community that this is, that Hopkins is, and in moments like this, I'm so proud of that aspect, because you don't know what else to do but to focus on the good in these types of situations. So grateful for those folks that are offering to reach out and lend a hand any way that they can. So just thank you to everyone that's responded today. Like I said, there's no strangers in Hopkins, and when the time is right, we are planning a vigil to commemorate the lives of the folks that were lost. They were members of our community, and in Hopkins, they're members of our family. So thank you to everyone involved in this response. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Expand a little bit more on the daycares that are volunteering to help these folks, these kids who don't have a place to live.
Yeah, I would just say when the time's right, right now there's an active police investigation, and they're still trying to figure out details. So folks have reached out, and I will be more than glad to give their names once more the details have been given out, and also as a way to respect the privacy of the families who might take up that service.
Mayor, to that end, you mentioned everyone knows everyone in Hopkins. While those names are still being worked through, of course, there are rumors out there. The name of the daycare is publicly listed. Is that a daycare, an operator that was known to you when you first saw the likelihood of this call?
I'll just respond to that and say that, to say what I said is that there's no strangers in Hopkins.
You mentioned that there might be a vigil plan. Is that something today, coming days?
Once more information is out. Yeah, once the investigation is complete and names are out.
Mayor, you mentioned this was obviously a horrific event. There's some parents out there who might be considering having their kids go to a daycare center, maybe more reluctant now. What would you say to those parents?
I mean, I would say that, the probability of this happening, this is something that has never happened in our city before. I don't know if I can think of another daycare that this type of incident has happened. So I think it's something that as parents, as a parent myself, this puts a little worry in the back of your mind, and to check on the places that you're sending your kids. If you know of people that have mental health issues or potential mental health issues, I just talked to our folks in communications, is that we'll be posting some mental health resources on our social media, and to make sure that if people if you think people are in trouble, or if you're in trouble, if you're feeling not right, to reach out to those mental health resources and get the help that you need. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, you've been listening to the press conference, the 4 o'clock press conference from Hopkins City Hall. The last person up there is the mayor there, Patrick Hanlon. Basically, to boil down his comments, other than talking about the help that's available to the community, he says our community is hurting. Obviously it is. He describes Hopkins as a very close-knit community, and when something like this happens, as tragic as it is, involving children and a family, it hurts everyone.
And we've talked to a trauma psychologist today about how this could long-term impact those 6 children who possibly witnessed this. Really important here is now they are linking the incident in Hopkins to another homicide investigation in Burnsville. So police responded to a home in Burnsville at Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue around 12:30 this afternoon, and they now believe that that victim was a relative of one of the victims at the Hopkins location.
We think it was the suspect of the Hopkins murder-suicide that had a hand in the death of a 78-year-old female there in Burnsville. We do know that the suspect in the case, the father, 41 years old, died of a gunshot wound. The wife, 41 years old, stab wounds, and the daughter, 7 years old, also died of stab wounds. Police chief confirmed there were 6 other children in that daycare at the time. The bodies, and this is only important because you wonder where those other 6 children were. The mother and child were found in the lower level, described as a basement with a basement entrance, which is where children were dropped off apparently. The suspect, the father, was found upstairs in that dwelling. The police chief, Brett Johnson, was pressed a couple times on whether he thought that the children were present, meaning there, when these murders were taking place. He doesn't know. He was unsure about that.
He also mentioned that the 40-year-old suspect, the perpetrator, was living at that 78-year-old woman's home in Burnsville. Although they were not willing to release a timeline as to, when that homicide happened, all they're saying is that they were called at around 12:30, and that they're still trying to piece together the timeline.
In fact, not all the relatives have been notified, thus we don't have names of any of the victims either in Burnsville or in Hopkins. He did confirm, and Courtney just reiterated that as well, that there is a relationship between the suspect, the father, and the 78-year-old woman who was stabbed to death in Burnsville. Again, you can presume what that relationship was. We don't know exactly what that relationship was between the male suspect and the 78-year-old female.
And I want to bring in former St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell, because he has unfortunately dealt with these situations before, probably too many times to count. Chief Axtell, former Chief Axtell, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So this latest development where you have multiple crime scenes, how does that change the investigation for law enforcement?
Well, the collaboration between the agencies, well, throughout the state, but specifically in the metro here is very good. All of these departments are similar sized. They have great relationships, and there's no one agency in this entire state of Minnesota that can do this work on their own. So I know Burnsville and Hopkins work very closely together, and that coordination, information exchanging, sharing information with each other is very, very important. And I know that's what's going on right now.
Todd, I know that you do crisis management consulting as well. This is, as described by the mayor, our community is hurting. Burnsville could be said the same thing for. How do you approach a situation as tragic as this?
Well, you have to approach it very human-centered, right? You have to acknowledge that this pain is out there. This is impacting entire communities. This is something that, as you heard the mayor say just a little bit ago in Hopkins there, that this hasn't happened before in Hopkins, and it's very rare that things like this happen. So showing that you care is critically important, making sure you're present, visible, vulnerable, acknowledging what's occurred, and being very, very transparent with information as quickly as you can, so that the community is informed well. I think that helps the healing process. And so far, what I'm seeing right now as a result of this tragic occurrence, a series of events, both cities, Hopkins and Burnsville, are doing a very good job right now and working with their partners. Certainly the crime scene processing, the medical examiner's office. There's a lot of moving parts that go on with these investigations behind the scenes that the general public just really isn't aware of.
Todd, can you talk about the command structure that's in place right now? Because we now have scenes in both Burnsville and Hopkins. We've got the BCA, crime scene investigators, Hennepin County Sheriff, all involved. What's the command structure in place, and what is going to be critical in the next 24 to 48 hours?
So right now, I don't know this for a fact, but it's common practice and protocol that the chief law enforcement officer of each of the agencies involved is technically the incident commander for both of those scenes. So Chief Smith and Chief Johnson are both in charge. They are collaboratively working with the partner agencies who are helping process the crime scenes. Sometimes answering calls for service as officers are detailed to the crime scene and the investigation. These are really smaller, as far as the big cities go. They're smaller agencies that have limited resources, so you have to rely on your partners to be able to answer the calls. And really importantly is to make sure that you are working with victims and organizations to provide that support to victims, and just as importantly, supporting officer wellness, officers who have been exposed to this trauma that will last a lifetime.
Who's responsible for that, Todd? Who as we heard the mayor say that there's help available, and we heard both police chiefs say the same thing. Who's responsible for providing that help to, say, the parents of the children who survived, or the children themselves?
Well, the chiefs and the representatives of the agencies will be working with trauma experts, specifically related to child trauma. It's in the Rolodex of police departments who to call in situations like this. So it's not starting from scratch. They have these relationships built up over time, And I know that there are going to be a lot of services that are going to be brought in to help support the children involved, the family members, the siblings of these children. They've gone through a lot. Images that will, I'm hopeful that they didn't see everything, but images that will last a lifetime. And this is the time to make sure that they're being supported in how to process this information with young minds.
This is a an apparent murder-suicide. How does that impact the investigative process when the perpetrator is deceased?
So it really doesn't impact. Sometimes it can actually make it a little more difficult because you still need to find the answers. You have to collect the evidence. You have to go back and review electronic information on cell phones, text messages, computers, et cetera, if there are ring camera systems, security systems, CCTV in the area, et cetera. So investigators are going to be going through a lot of information, and unfortunately in this case, they certainly won't be able to interview a suspect because the suspect appears to be deceased at this point. So it's all more important now to get those answers the best you possibly can, knowing that you'll never have an interview with a potential suspect.
Todd, I don't want to take anything away from the tragic element of this case, but I'm interested in how these dots got connected in the course of just a couple hours. We were, as I said earlier, we were covering these as two separate situations, two separate homicides in two fairly well separated cities. How, in your experience investigating crimes, being part of that process, did these dots get connected so quickly?
Well, in this specific case, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that the investigation rolls out really quickly. So all family members would be contacted, asked about the situation, if they know what's going on, what may have led up to this act of violence. And during that process of contacting those family members, sometimes this is what can happen. You can unfortunately discover that other crimes have been committed. So I would imagine that during the process of the investigation that occurred in Hopkins led someone to the deceased body in Burnsville.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard a lot about the psychological impact on the officers. Obviously, that's always a concern. A lot of these officers are parents themselves, and having to come to that scene, see a deceased 7-year-old, two other individuals in the house. Do you train your officers, in your experience, for something like this? And then what is the response after to make sure you're taking care of the first responders?
Officers are trained to respond to situations like this, but you can never be prepared. As a human being who happens to wear a badge, you're not designed. Humans aren't designed to encounter this type of tragic occurrence and this trauma that they're seeing. I can tell you, as a former first responder, when you arrive at a violent crime scene where children are involved, it's chilling. It lasts, doesn't just last your career, it lasts a lifetime. Images that are burned in the officers' minds forever. So it's really important that those officers are supported, not just the officers. You have medical personnel arriving, you have medical examiner staff arriving, you have 911 dispatch call takers who are experiencing this trauma, maybe not firsthand through sight, but there are so many people in public safety who are impacted by these events that sometimes we forget about. So it's really important that police departments have robust officer wellness programs to support those officers, making sure social workers are embedded wherever possible in police departments to help with getting through these difficult times. And counseling is often not just something that is nice to have. It's critically important, and sometimes you have to almost ask officers, suggest them into the counseling, because sometimes you don't understand it at first, and this trauma can develop over years where you may not feel it at first, but a couple years down the road, it just hits you. So you have to start that process now.
Todd, the images are one thing, and I know that you're well aware of that, and you voiced that well just now, but there's anger involved in a situation like that. You know, we feel it out here. You know, there's like, you ask the question why as a parent, and you get angry in a situation like that. And I presume that's one of the feelings that first responders have to deal with as well. I mean, parents certainly have to. The victims, the small children will deal with all kinds of issues. The parents of those children, anybody connected with this. But first responders, how do they not get angry in a situation like this? I mean, we do. You must. Others do. How do they process that?
Yeah, Randy, that's a good point. Good question. They do get off. They do get angry because first responders are human, right? And you have to kind of keep it together during an emergency and be professional. But you do get mad. You ask yourself, how could this possibly happen to a young person? Questioning things, being angry. And it's really important, again, to make sure that we're offering support to officers as much as possible, because when they go home, it's still on their shoulders, and it can bleed over into their personal life with their families, and it can impact families of officers. So that's why it's really important to be able to talk these things through in a safe environment, a confidential environment, to make sure we all know how to best navigate those emotions, because none of us have all the answers.
Your insight is really critical at this time, you know, especially while we're not getting a lot of information out. So we so appreciate you. Former St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
You know, it's so interesting, Randy, when you talk about not just the impacts on the victims here, but the impacts on those law enforcement officers. You know, there's going to be a lot of care in the coming days and months to take care of those individuals as well. I mean, we not only have 3 deceased in that house in Hopkins, we now know that we have a 78-year-old found deceased from stab wounds in a house in Burnsville. So we've got multiple scenes now, and there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, there are family members of the victims, you know, that they're dealing with this in a very close emotional way. Obviously, we all first think of the children who were present there. It's hard to not think about that. And you hope that the words that are spoken from the police chiefs and the mayor, that there is help out there, and please get them that help. But yeah, this is such a tragic situation, and to be honest with you, we've just seen so much of it in this community. When you think about Annunciation coming up on August 27th, I think is the date of that, and they're very different situations, noted, but they involve children, they involve parents, and they just have a tremendous impact on the communities that suffer through that.
Yeah. So again, we've got 2 scenes here. We've got a 78-year-old who is a close relative of the alleged perpetrator in Hopkins, who was found stabbed to death in a home in the area of Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue. And then just after 9 o'clock this morning is when a father of a child that went to that daycare in Hopkins walked in. It sounds like they walked into this scene. They called 911, and there they found 2 deceased in the basement. So we have a 7-year-old girl who was stabbed, a 41-year-old female who was stabbed. They were found in the basement, and that was the entrance to the daycare. So that's where the parents were bringing their kids in and dropping them off, where this parent presumably walked in and saw what he saw, or what she saw. And then they found the perpetrator, a 40-year-old male, deceased from a gunshot wound, upstairs.
Brett Johnson, the Hopkins police chief, described his community as grieving, understood there. Names have not been released of any of the victims or the perpetrator, a suspected perpetrator, based on the fact that all of the relatives have not been notified. That stands true in Burnsville as well for the 78-year-old female there that apparently died of stab wounds. We can assume, if the 2 cases are connected, that homicide would have occurred before the Hopkins homicide. If you believe what police believe, and that is that the suspect in Hopkins also had a hand in the homicide in Burnsville as well. So.
Yeah, they are not releasing the timeline, but we can assume that Burnsville occurred, then Hopkins occurred. Yeah. It was a family member who found that victim in Burnsville.
Also, it's important to note, and the police chief confirmed this for us, Police Chief Johnson again, that there were no previous calls to the Brown Bear daycare for any police activity there whatsoever. It was confirmed that there was no note left by the suspect as well in the murder-suicide in Hopkins, so we don't have any answers there as far as, a past or reasoning. Not that there's ever a why in these kind of situations, but they do look for those things for some form of explanation.
No previous calls to that home in Burnsville either, they said, and they did mention that the perpetrator, they believe, was living at that home in Burnsville. So while one of the victims at the home in Hopkins was married to the perpetrator, who is also now deceased, they didn't know the current state of their marriage. They do know that he was living at this home in Burnsville where the other victim was found.
Earlier in the day, prior to this happening, one of the daycare mothers received a text from the daycare operator, the female in this particular case, saying, "Do not bring your child here. It's crazy here right now." That would have been minutes before the incident took place. That's really the only link we have to any of the parents other than the one that would have called 911 when they arrived at the scene as well.
Yeah, can you imagine?
No.
Tragic all the way around. It is my understanding that we have our reporter Mike Manzoni on the scene. Mike, you were there for this press conference that just took place with the Hopkins police chief and the mayor. Get us up to speed on where we're at in this investigation.
Well, the major development from that news conference was, of course, the connection between the homicide that happened in Burnsville earlier today and then the murder-suicide that happened here in Hopkins at that in-home daycare. We don't really have any clear understanding of a timeline here. The police chiefs were asked about that, only that obviously the homicide in Burnsville happened at some point before the murder-suicide, and we know that, of course, because the suspect was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the basement of that daycare, the Brown Bear daycare. It's also unclear exactly what the relationship between the man and the woman were. We know that they are either married or were married. The police chief said it's unclear if it was a man and his wife or a man and his ex-wife. Also a victim here, their 7-year-old daughter also found dead. The man was killed died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, I should say. His wife or ex-wife and his 7-year-old daughter died from stab wounds, investigators say. Now, over in Burnsville, that call came in a few hours later, around 12:30. A 78-year-old woman who we know is a relative of that family's was found stabbed to death inside that home. Investigators say that they also believe the suspect in this case, that man who killed himself, was living at that Burnsville home at the time. Unclear exactly what the relationship between that 78-year-old woman and the suspect is, but that they were related somehow. All the victims, as I mentioned, were stabbed to death. At this point, they do not have a motive. They have not identified a reason why this happened. They didn't find a note or any other evidence indicating what may have led up to this tragedy or these tragedies. They have said that they are trying to kind of piece that together at this point. We did ask about any kind of calls for service, any kind of previous history with either of these homes or the suspect or any of the victims, and they said they were not familiar with them. They hadn't gone out recently or at any point in the past to either of these homes, the Hopkins daycare or the Burnsville home where that 78-year-old woman was found dead. So there was no indication, at least recently, that anything was wrong or that anything could potentially lead up to what happened today. Police say that this all started around 9 o'clock this morning when they got a call from a parent who showed up to that daycare here in Hopkins to drop off their children and either found the aftermath of what happened or walked in on it while it was happening and called 911. We should also point out that there were 6 other children in the home at this time who fortunately were unharmed. They've since been reunited with their families, but obviously they were in the home when this happened, presumably saw or at least heard what was going on. And these are younger children, daycare age, so there's what happened today and then dealing with the aftermath of this. The mayor, Patrick Hanlon, was talking about how difficult this is, obviously, for them, for the children, and what they're going through and what they're going to be going through in the coming days and weeks and months and even years from what they possibly witnessed today. He also mentioned that this is also difficult for first responders. When he was thanking them, he talked about the services that they're going to be having made available for them, because they have to process also what they saw and what they witnessed when they were kind of collecting evidence and going through these scenes today. So we do know that there was a connection, but a timeline is unclear, and we're still working out the relationships between the victims and the suspect in this case.
All right, Mike. We will continue to follow that as well and try and piece some of those pieces together, although I think that press conference did answer quite a few questions in terms of how these things may be connected. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. In fact, the press conference did indicate that the connection was familial between the Burnsville case and the Hopkins case. I think we have part of that press conference queued up, ready to go. Let's listen to that.
Brent Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I'm Police Chief Brent Johnson with the Hopkins Police Department. I want to begin by expressing my sincerest condolences to the victims, families, and Hopkins community, along with all the families who have been a part of this tragedy today. This is an extremely tragic event for Hopkins or for any community. The victims were all valued members of the Hopkins community. Any event involving the loss of life is a difficult process, but when children are involved, it's especially devastating. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected. What we know and we can tell you now is this morning at approximately 9 a.m., the Hopkins Police Department, in coordination with multiple other agencies, responded to a report of a stabbing at a residence operating as a home daycare in the 200 block of Tyler Avenue North in Hopkins. Upon arrival, officers located a deceased 41-year-old male with a self-inflicted gunshot wound and a deceased 41-year-old female and 7-year-old female victim with stab wounds. They were all members of the same family. 6 other children at that time were present in the daycare, and they were all safely evacuated and physically unharmed and swiftly reunited with their families. At this time, there are no outstanding suspects and no ongoing threat to the public. At this time, the medical examiner has not released the names of the victims involved. They need to wait for pending family notification, and we expect that information to be available in the coming days. Again, this remains an active investigation, and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab is up there currently processing the scene. Again, I want to thank the many officers and agencies who responded and assisted on the scene to continue this investigation. As a part of the cooperation and communication between public safety departments, a link was made today to another tragedy down in Burnsville. Burnsville Police Chief Matt Smith will discuss that link in a moment. But before I turn it over, I just want to again express that our entire community is grieving the loss unnecessarily due to domestic violence. Hopkins is an extremely close-knit community, and we all mourn together. Please take care of your neighbors, families, and friends, and give your loved ones a hug when you go home tonight. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Burnsville Police Chief Matt Smith. I want to thank you for coming today and thank the public safety team from Hopkins for their cooperation, coordination, and communication with us over the past few hours. We believe tragedies in our two cities are linked, and I want to talk through the timeline in Burnsville. At approximately 12:23 p.m. today, Burnsville police were dispatched to a report of a stabbing in a home near Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue. Upon arrival, officers found one deceased individual. We believe it is a close family relative of the suspect in Hopkins. The deceased was a female, age 78. The suspect, we believe, had been recently living in that residence in Burnsville. Based on work between our officers and investigators with the Hopkins Police Department, we believe this tragedy and the tragedy in Hopkins are linked. We do not believe there's an ongoing threat to the community. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the neighbors, friends, and family of those affected by this today. The medical examiner has not released the name of the victim pending family notification. We expect that information to be available in the coming days. This remains an active investigation. We join the Burnsville and Hopkins communities in mourning these losses of life. When tragedies like these happen, they affect entire communities. I ask that we focus on our care and concern for each other. Lean on your family, friends, and neighbors over the coming days. I encourage residents to spend time acknowledging this loss and ensuring we care for each other. We will continue our investigation in coordination with the Hopkins Police Department. We now turn our care and concern for the community.
We'll take a few questions, and then I want to make sure the mayor has a few moments to speak. And so if you guys have questions of the
Can
chiefs.
the chief just walk us through a timeline a little bit more about how the discovery was made and then how that suspect made his way to Hopkins?
At this time, we don't have a timeline of events between Burnsville and Hopkins. We don't have a timeline between Hopkins and Burnsville at this point in time. We will be investigating that timeline, specifically determine, the method and causation of death and the timeline specifically in the future here. But that takes some time to figure that all out. So
Can you say when the woman was likely killed in Burnsville?
I do not have that information. I know that's an active investigation down there, and they're going to have to determine that with the medical examiner.
Chief Johnson, earlier today you said that this was a family, and so can you confirm that this was a husband and wife that were found at the daycare and that was the daughter?
Yes, so it is their daughter, and it is a husband and wife. I don't know what their current living situation is. I don't know if he was still living there or not at the residence, but it was her father and her mother. And they're all family members who were victims of today's tragedy.
Is there anything more you can say about this location inside of this daycare incident, whether children were in the same room with them or if they were not having to witness this tragedy?
So there were 6 other children present within the home when this incident occurred. Where they were specifically at the time of the assault by the suspect, I'm not sure of that.
With that Burnsville victim, was that the mother of the wife or the father? Is that something of those victims, that husband and wife? Was that older female victim in Burnsville? How were they related to that couple?
At this point, we need to confirm the identity. So it is a family relative, but we should have that information shortly. When the medical examiner can release the names and the birth dates, then we can obviously update that information.
What, if any, previous interactions have you had with the suspect or the family or the daycare involved in this?
We have not had any police calls to that location or that daycare.
Does he have any criminal history, the gentleman involved?
I am not aware of his criminal history.
Was it a family member or an officer that had checked on this deceased woman in Burnsville? Like, who discovered this person?
I'll let Matt speak to that.
Yeah, that was a family member that called officers and reported the scene.
Matt, you said that you believe that the suspect was living at that residence at the time, just confirming that that's correct.
That is what we've been told, yes.
Okay, were you told that by the other family member that called it in?
I'm not entirely sure where we got that information, but I know we were told that he was living there for at least a little bit of time.
Appreciating you're still putting that timeline together, it must be fair to say that the Burnsville incident happened prior to what happened in Hopkins.
That seems to be the case, but again, we don't have a timeline yet.
Did you leave any kind of note?
No, there was no note left behind.
And you recovered both a knife and Was it a handgun at the scene in Hopkins?
The actual weapons that were recovered right now, it's still an active investigation, and we're going to let the medical examiner and the crime lab process that information. The actual weapons will be obviously shared in a future time.
Can you share with us the state of the 911 caller who discovered the scene? How are they doing? And, what was that like to hear that 911 call?
Yeah, it was an individual who was actually dropping off their children at the location to receive daycare services, who encountered the situation, who may have witnessed some of the altercation inside the residence at that time. They called us and notified us of the situation.
What kind of contact was there with the dead man from the morning in Burnsville to Hopkins?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What kind of contact, if any, was there with the dead man from the morning in Burnsville until Hopkins?
We didn't have any contact whatsoever with him.
And you say we, is that local?
Us, Hopkins, and I don't believe Burnsville had any contact with the suspect in the last few hours
Until
prior to this.
The person at the daycare then called?
Correct.
Correct. And we are not aware of any prior calls to the address in Burnsville.
In regard to that 911 caller, are you saying that the altercation was unfolding when they called, or that they were already dead when that parent came to them?
They witnessed the ongoings inside the residence at that time. So, yes, our witness clearly identified who the suspect was, who the perpetrator was, and that's why we can confirm that the suspect who is deceased is the one who victimized either his wife or ex-wife, I'm not sure again of the familial relationship, and his own daughter.
Were all three found in the same location that was on 50 floors?
No, the wife and child were located, I believe, in the basement area, and the suspect was located in the upper floor of the residence.
And where were the 6 children who were unharmed? And where
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Where were the 6 children who were unharmed?
All right, you were just listening to Police Chief Brent Johnson of the Hopkins Police Department. We also heard from Mayor Patrick Hanlon updating us on this apparent murder-suicide that occurred in Hopkins today. We now know that that murder-suicide is also linked to a homicide in Burnsville, where a 78-year-old woman, a close relative to the perpetrator in that Hopkins incident, was also found stabbed to death.
Yeah, this all began about 9 o'clock this morning in Hopkins at the Brown Bear Daycare on the 200 block of Tyler Avenue there. Very difficult situation. That's a murder, double murder suicide situation there. We're now learning, as Courtney just pointed out, that there was a connection to a 78-year-old female in Burnsville as well. The suspect in that case in Hopkins connected to that homicide as well. We'll have much more on this as we navigate through our evening newscast. Up next after the break is our 5 o'clock newscast. Stay right here.
This is Fox 9 News at 5. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for the news at 5. I'm Simone Woolridge.
And I'm Kelsey Carlson. Thank you for joining us tonight. We want to get to some of our top stories that have been developing throughout the day.
Yeah, this one in particular. 3 people we know, a family dead at a Hopkins daycare, a stabbing at a home in Burnsville, and police say those 2 scenes are connected. We have been tracking this story since this morning, and in the last hour, police gave an update as to what happened there.
So let's take you to those 2 crime scenes. In Burnsville, a deadly stabbing at a home in the area of Maple Island Road and Joplin Avenue. And then in Hopkins, the daycare is located on the 200 block of Taylor Avenue North. And we do have team coverage of this today. Karen Scullin and Corin Hoggard have been on scene all day. Corin has reaction from neighbors and witnesses.
But let's start with Karen Scullin. Karen, officials talking in the last hour. What can you